I was dead. Like, properly dead. Cancer got me in my old life. No family, no house, no wife, zero reasons to stick around. I spent my last year blowing my savings on travel and playing Mount and Blade all night like the absolute legend I was. Then mid-gaming session, boom, lights out, can't breathe, goodbye cruel world. Except, not goodbye, I woke up in a cave. A cave, with wolves howling outside like they were auditioning for a horror movie soundtrack, a crackling bonfire blocking the entrance, and two European-looking dudes squatting behind it like the world's most terrified camping buddies. One was this big blonde guy named Mars, built like a fridge, holding an axe. The other was a skinny dude literally named Dung Fork. Yeah, Dung Fork. His parents clearly didn't love him. Now here's the fun part. A flood of memories hit my brain like a truck. Turns out I transmigrated into the body of another guy also named Hogarth. Lucky me, right? Wrong. This Hogarth's life was somehow even more depressing than mine. My new family, the Kalinsa clan, used to be one of 5 founding duke houses of the Swadino Empire. Big deal, powerful bloodline, dragon blood running through our veins, the whole package. But 300 years of spectacular failure later, Grandpa got himself killed fighting orcs. The Empire blamed us, slashed our rank down to the bottom-tier baron, and everyone stole our land. Dad died a year ago trying to earn money as an adventurer. I'm the last Kalinsa standing. 14 years old, skinny as a stick, haven't eaten a proper meal in ages. Oh, and the Empire says if I don't get land within a year, they're stripping my noble title and I become a nobody forever. Getting land costs 50 gold coins. I have 10 copper coins. That's like needing 50,000 bucks and having $1. So baby Hogarth, the original one, sold the family's last crappy house, scraped together 5 gold coins, bought a sword, registered as an adventurer, and joined this flower-picking quest led by Mars. Pick 100 black rooster flowers from Thorn Valley, split 2 gold coins 4 ways. Easy money, right? Wrong. Some genius on the team stumbled into a wolf den. During breeding season, in the wolves' actual living room. The wolves took that personally. We ran. One guy got chomped and passed out. Original Hogarth fainted from pure terror and malnutrition. That's when I moved in, like the universe's worst Airbnb swap. And now, lying here pretending to be unconscious, I heard Mars whisper to Dung Fork, when the fire dies, we throw him outside. While the wolves eat him, we run for that tree. Me. They wanted to throw me to the wolves. As a distraction, a human chew toy. My sweat went cold. I'm a starving 14-year-old noodle boy. I couldn't fight a strong breeze, let alone Fridge Man and Dung Fork. But then, oh sweet beautiful then, a voice popped into my head. Mount and Blade system downloading. My golden finger arrived. I almost screamed with joy. Almost. Because wolves and murderous teammates, remember? System merging with reality. Error encountered. Please wait. Please wait. I'm about to become wolf food, and the system is buffering like bad Wi-Fi. 10 agonizing minutes later, merge complete. Character bound to host. I pulled up my stats. Commoner Hogarth, level 1. Constitution, 4. Intelligence, 6. So basically I'm a nerd made of paper. But I had 4 free attribute points, some weapon proficiency, weirdly high archery at 91, and an inventory with 60 slots. Inside the inventory, 1 longbow, 1 quiver of arrows, and 5 gold coins. Real, spendable, Empire-minted gold dragons with little dragon engravings on them, because apparently my family has dragon blood, and the royal family are called the Red Dragon Clan, while we're the Wind Dragon Clan. Fancy names for a family that owns absolutely nothing. I tested the inventory, thought about a gold coin, and it appeared in my palm. Thought again, it vanished back into the magic pocket dimension. A personal invisible backpack that nobody can see or steal from. In a world where I'm broke, starving, hunted by wolves, and about to be betrayed by my own teammates, I now had a cheat system, a bow I apparently know how to use, and the world's best hiding spot for my lunch money. Things were finally looking up. Well, assuming I survived the next 30 minutes. Okay, so I'm lying in a stinky cave full of animal poop. 2 guys are planning to feed me to wolves, and I just got a cheat system. Time to spend my stat points like a Black Friday shopper with no self-control. For attribute points, all into Constitution. Every single one. No hesitation. Big mistake. Well, not a mistake exactly, But nobody warned me it would feel like getting my blood replaced with boiling soup. My organs felt like they were slow cooking from the inside. Sweat poured off me like a broken faucet. My muscles started ripping apart and rebuilding themselves. Bigger, harder, meaner. And the smell. Black gunk oozed out of my skin like I was a human trash bag. Absolutely vile. Thank God the cave already smelled like a toilet, because Mars and Dung Fork didn't notice a thing. They were too busy staring at the wolf eyes glowing in the darkness outside. Meanwhile, I was over here silently having the most painful glow-up in history. When it was over, I looked down and, hello, abs. My noodle arms had actual muscles now. My loose clothes were suddenly tight. I'd even grown taller. 5 minutes ago, I was a malnourished scarecrow. Now I looked like a scarecrow that discovered protein shakes. If I'd added even one more point, I probably would have exploded. Literally. My body was at its absolute limit. Only reason I didn't scream was because cancer in my past life had already taught me the advanced course in suffering quietly. Next up, 10 weapon points. Where to put them? My archery was already at 91, highest of everything. So I dumped all 10 into bow skills, pushing it past 100. And that's when something wild happened. The words, archery, beginner mastery, appeared on my stat screen. This wasn't in the original game at all. The system had merged with this world's actual combat arts. Suddenly, my brain downloaded 2 years' worth of archery training memories. Rain, sun, thousands of arrows, busted targets. I experienced all of it in seconds without lifting a finger. My arms got longer. Not creepy long, just optimized for pulling a bowstring. My back muscles thickened, my eyesight sharpened so much I could count individual wolf eyes glinting in the bushes outside. I went from, couldn't hit a barn, to, could nail a fly at 100 paces. In this world, if you master one combat art and can lift a 200-pound stone over your head, you qualify as an apprentice knight. I flexed experimentally. Yeah, I could definitely do that now. Me, the kid who couldn't afford dinner yesterday, now met the minimum requirements for knighthood. Being an apprentice knight meant better quests, better pay, access to mercenary work, real money. The kind of money that could eventually buy me that 50 gold coin land permit and save my family name from extinction. But first, I had to survive the next 5 minutes. Boss, the firewood's almost gone, Dung Fork whispered nervously. Throw him to the wolves. We run while they eat, Mars replied, eyes cold as a freezer. Dung Fork nodded and turned toward me, probably expecting to find a helpless, unconscious noodle boy. He found something very different. The second he reached for me, I grabbed the sword I'd been clutching this whole time and slashed his throat wide open. One move. Clean. He dropped like a sack of potatoes, blood spraying everywhere. Mars spun around, total shock on his face. His buddy was gurgling on the floor, and the unconscious weakling was crouching there with a bloody sword and brand new muscles. I lunged. My blade shot at his neck like a striking snake. The cave ceiling was too low for him to stand up properly, and his big axe was useless in this cramped space. He barely managed to block, stumbling backward, and stepped right into the campfire. His scream was music to my ears. Look, I'm not saying I enjoyed it, but when someone literally plans to use you as wolf bait, you lose sympathy real fast. So I just killed my first 2 humans ever, and let me tell you, 0 out of 10, would not recommend for a relaxing evening activity. My hands were shaking, my stomach was doing backflips, and there were 2 very dead guys bleeding all over the cave floor. But hey, it was either them or me becoming a wolf-happy meal, so I squashed my feelings down and got to work. First order of business, looting the bodies like a proper video game protagonist. Wallets? Mine. Dung Fork's leather shoes? Check the size, close enough, mine. Mars's armor? Way too big, but I wrapped it around myself like a medieval bathrobe and tied it tight. Everything I couldn't wear went straight into my magical invisible inventory. God, I love that thing. Then I yeeted Dung Fork's body out the cave entrance like the world's most disturbing bowling ball. The wolves went nuts. One massive beast, and I mean cow-sized, fangs sticking out like steak knives, snatched him up instantly. The rest dogpiled on top. These weren't cute forest puppies. These were nightmare fuel with legs. That gave me my window. I whipped out my bow from the inventory. Poof. Instant archer, and started dropping wolves before they even knew what was happening. For dead in seconds. Arrows flying like angry wasps. The survivors scattered into the bushes, probably questioning their life choices. I grabbed everything useful, Mars's axe, the supply bag, 3 wool blankets, shoved it all into my inventory, then sprinted for the one climbable tree nearby. The alpha wolf chased me. I felt its claws rake across my back hard enough to rip the armor, and if I hadn't been wearing Mars's oversized leather bathrobe, that would have been my spine saying hello to the outside world. I scrambled up that tree like a caffeinated squirrel. The wolf's jaws snapped shut about an inch below my foot. From my branch, I nailed it through the neck with one arrow. Good night, big guy. The remaining wolves kept coming back to eat the bodies, which was disgusting but also incredibly convenient. They'd sneak back, start chewing, I'd pick them off one by one, like the world's most morbid carnival shooting game. 12 wolves total by morning. When the sun finally burned off the fog, I was starving so badly I could have eaten the tree. I opened Mars's supply bag and discovered that jerk had been hoarding white bread and beef jerky the whole trip while feeding us brick-hard black bread. I ate everything. All of it. Zero regrets. Then came my favorite discovery, dead wolves fit in the inventory. All 12 of them, stacked in one slot. My magical pocket dimension apparently sorts by category, so a dozen giant wolf corpses just filed themselves neatly away like library books. Each one worth 3 to 5 silver coins. That's roughly 60 silver total. I went from 10 copper coins to my name to actual money in one terrifying night. I collected my arrows too, only lost 3, and these were quality system gifted arrows with iron tips and raptor feathers. Not cheap stuff. Then I got out of that valley as fast as my newly muscular legs could carry me, richer, stronger, and smelling absolutely terrible. I leveled up to 2 just from that wolf massacre, which meant 1 fresh attribute point and 10 weapon points. The attribute point went straight into Constitution again. Felt like chugging a warm energy drink through my veins. The weapon points I saved for later since apparently killing stuff also raises proficiency naturally. Why spend free points when murder does the job? Getting out of Thorn Valley took half a day. The original Hog's memories taught me some important world building. This empire runs on bloodline magic. Every noble family has some creature's blood in their veins and a matching breathing technique. The local lord's family? Wind Eagle blood. My family, the Colenses? Wind Dragon blood. Literally one of the most powerful bloodlines on the continent. Problem is, it's so powerful that almost nobody can awaken it, which is basically why my family went extinct. Amazing bloodline. 0 people who can use it. Peak comedy. The original Hog wasn't stupid either. He buried the family's secret wind dragon breathing manual somewhere in Black Rock City before leaving. Can't practice it until becoming an apprentice knight anyway. And walking around with a top-tier secret technique is basically wearing a sign that says, "Please rob me." I built a wooden sled, loaded. 2 wolves on it. Keeping my magic inventory secret, obviously, strapped on the bow, hung the sword on my belt, and strolled into the nearest village looking like a baby-faced action hero. Villagers stared like they'd seen a toddler drag home a bear. Old Bill at the general store tried lowballing me at 8 silver for 2 wolves with perfectly intact pelts. I haggled him up to 8 silver plus a pound of salt. Not great, but I had 0 market knowledge and 11 more wolves in my invisible pocket dimension, so who cares? Treated myself to actual food at the tavern: beef, white bread, vegetables, rice wine. 30 copper. The old Hog would have cried at such luxury. That kid had been sleeping in ditches and chewing rocks disguised as bread. Not me. I have a cheat system now. We eat like kings. Then some heavily perfumed lady built like a refrigerator squeezed up next to me offering an unforgettable night for 1 silver coin. Her cheap perfume nearly knocked me unconscious faster than the wolves did. I think my new constitution points were the only thing keeping me from passing out. I turned down the village love interest, a perfumed woman wide enough to block a doorway, and she had the nerve to keep pitching. "You're blushing. It's your first time, right? Ma'am, I'm blushing because your cologne is melting my eyebrows." I put my hand on my sword, and she finally waddled off into the night. The bartender watched her go and sighed like I'd just rejected a supermodel. "That's wheat flour, prettiest woman in the village." "Sure, buddy. Different strokes for different folks." Apparently out here, wide hips mean wife material because they can work hard and birth babies. I ordered a private room for 60 copper and 10 pounds of white bread for the road, bolted the door, and collapsed onto a bed made of wooden planks and hay. Paradise. Before sleeping, I raided Mars and Dung Fork's wallets. Mars had been sitting on 1 gold coin and 12 silver this whole time, while feeding us garbage bread and plotting to throw me to wolves. Dung Fork had 10 silver. Classic psychic salary. I also discovered my inventory only stores gold coins directly, not silver or copper. Annoying, but I worked around it by keeping a decoy wallet on my belt and the real money hidden inside my inventory bags. Pickpocket that, criminals. Morning came. I hit the road with enough bread to feed a small army. Spent 2 hours in a secluded forest practicing swordplay because I needed to figure out how weapon proficiency actually works. Results. Using a sword gains points faster than using an axe. Practicing basic techniques gains faster than random swinging. Practicing advanced techniques gains fastest of all. So I focused on Whirlwind Slash, a special move my original body's father taught him but never actually mastered. Grinding proficiency like a true gamer. 2 days later, Black Rock City rose up on the horizon like a giant black beast squatting on the plains. Massive dark stone walls, ancient and intimidating. I felt like an ant approaching a sleeping dragon. Along the way, I'd sold the remaining wolf carcasses village by village. 42 more silver coins. Not bad for cargo I'd been carrying in an invisible magic pocket. Entering the city cost 20 copper just for existing. A head tax that free citizens pay every single time they walk through any city gate. Nobles skip it, naturally, but my noble family crest was buried somewhere safe because the original hog wasn't about to lose the last proof of his bloodline on an adventure. Smart kid. Terrible at staying alive, but smart about paperwork. Black Rock City smelled exactly how you'd imagine a medieval city with zero plumbing. Horse manure floating in sewage rivers, mud streets that doubled as open toilets, and an aroma so thick I could taste it. Most people wore straw sandals or nothing at all. My stolen leather boots from Dung Fork made me practically aristocratic by comparison. Headed straight to the Adventurers Guild, a 2-story stone building buzzing with people. Slapped 100 black rooster flowers on the counter and handed over Mars's wooden ID tag. The clerk didn't even look up. Didn't ask why the tag's owner wasn't the one standing there. Adventurers die like flies around here, and nobody cares enough to investigate. 2 gold coins, done. I now had 8 gold total in my invisible stash. Checked the job board on my way out. Flower picking, cargo hauling, cart pulling, firewood chopping, poverty wages for backbreaking labor. Nothing worth my time anymore. I'm a wolf-slaying, system-powered future knight now. I have standards. Some muscle-bound idiot with a greatsword cornered me at the door. Hey kid, where's Mars? Dead. Lucky kid. Buy me a rum and I'll hook you up with better jobs. Nice try, buddy. I've seen this scam before. Befriend the naive teenager. Steal his 2 gold coins by Tuesday. I walked past him without a second glance. Next stop, the Knights Guild, to find out what it costs to take the apprentice knight exam. The answer punched me in the wallet. 10 gold coins. 10. I had 8. So close yet so painfully far. This world charges you for literally everything. Want to enter a city? Pay. Want to prove you're strong? Pay more. Want to own land? Sell a kidney. Night fell while I was brooding over finances, and I wandered into a quiet back street from the original hog's memory. That's when 2 figures in black robes stepped out of the shadows, one in front, one behind. White crow emblems embroidered on their sleeves. Hand over the 2 gold coins, kid. They were never meant to be yours, the Crow Gang. The original hog's memories painted a vivid picture. Black Rock City's most infamous underground thugs. They're the cockroaches of this city, parasites who prey on the weak, steal from the desperate, and have absolutely zero shame about it. Named after carrion crows because they pick clean anything that's already dying. And here they were, looking at a skinny 14-year-old in oversized armor and seeing an easy payday. They must have followed me from the Adventurers Guild, watched me collect those 2 gold coins, and waited for dark like the cowardly bottom feeders they are. 2 guys in black cloaks versus 1 teenager in a dead man's leather bathrobe on a street that smelled like a sewer. I'd survived wolves, betrayal, a full-body stat upgrade that nearly exploded me, and the world's most aggressive plus-sized escort. These 2 crow cosplaying muggers were about to learn that the skinny kid they'd been stalking had arms like a junior bodybuilder and archery skills that could pin a fly to a wall at 100 paces. But they didn't know that yet. All they saw was a scared little boy with gold in his pocket and nobody around to help. Their mistake. Two Crow Gang thugs cornered me in a dark alley that smelled like a toilet had a baby with a swamp. One had a short axe, the other a sword, and both had the confidence of men who'd never been told no by a skinny teenager before. I put on my best pathetic orphan face. Please, big brothers, if I give you everything I'll starve. How about just one gold coin and we call it even? My voice cracked perfectly. Oscar-worthy performance. The axe guy sneered and stepped closer. Whether you live or die ain't our problem, kid. Perfect. Close enough. My sword left its sheath and opened his throat before his brain finished processing that the scared little boy had just become a scared little boy with excellent blade technique. He grabbed his neck, eyes bulging with pure disbelief, and dropped. His buddy took one look at the blood fountain, screamed, "Murder!" at the top of his lungs, and bolted like a roach when you flipped the lights on. Real brave, these Crow Gang boys. Terrifying reputation, wet paper courage. I swapped to my bow so fast it would have looked like a magic trick to anyone watching. Which, technically, it was. One arrow through the runner's neck. He face-planted into the mud. 2 for 2, 0 witnesses, elapsed time maybe 8 seconds. I looted both bodies at hyperspeed. Wallets, weapons, arrow. Dumped everything into my inventory and vanished into the darkness like a ghost wearing an oversized leather bathrobe. Behind me, passers-by found 2 dead Crow Gang members, took one look at the Crow emblems, and scattered faster than my arrows fly. Nobody wants Crow Gang drama. Half an hour later, more crow-robed goons showed up and dragged the bodies away. Half an hour after that, the city guards finally rolled in. Their investigation lasted approximately 15 seconds. The Crow Gang already cleaned it up? Cool, not our problem. Pack it up, boys. Law enforcement at its finest. Now, I knew the Crows would eventually figure out who killed their guys. I wasn't exactly hiding my identity when I strolled through the Adventurers Guild earlier. So, time to disappear. I made a speed run through the nighttime shops. 2 silver worth of white bread, 2 silver of beef jerky. My inventory keeps food fresh, which is basically a medieval refrigerator that fits in my brain. Then I snaked through back alleys to the eastern slums, climbed a tree, hopped a wall, and landed inside a massive abandoned compound that used to belong to the Wild Wolf Mercenary Company. They'd marched into the deep forest a year ago on some big mission, and exactly 0 of them came back. Oops. Their loss was my secret hideout. The original Hog used to sneak over here as a kid. His family home was right next door before he sold it. Smart Boy had buried the family treasures under a tree in the training yard before leaving. I dug up a sheepskin-wrapped wooden box, stuffed it into my inventory, and relocated to an empty barracks room with a dusty single bed. Wool blanket from inventory, bread and water from inventory, door locked, lights out. First proper sleep since arriving in this insane world. Absolute bliss. Morning came, and I checked the Crow Gang wallets. 30 copper between the 2 of them. 30. These idiots risked their lives to rob me of 2 gold coins, and they didn't even have lunch money between them. The audacity of broke people trying to rob slightly less broke people will never stop amazing me. Then I opened the wooden box, and my heart nearly stopped. Sitting on top of a thick sheepskin book was a silver-blue badge with a wind dragon in the center, crossed by a knight's sword and lance. On the back, Kalensa. This was it. My family crest, the one physical proof that I'm the legitimate heir to the Kalensa barony. Made with mithril, a magical metal worth a fortune. Losing this badge would be like losing my entire identity and future in one shot. And underneath it, the real treasure. The Wind Dragon Breathing Manual. The Kalensa family's legendary cultivation technique, passed down for 300 years. My hands actually trembled picking it up. I spent the entire day reading the first level. Turned out the technique has 3 tiers. Level 1 is for apprentice knights. You breathe in magical energy from the environment and refine it into your blood, upgrading your body and life force until you eventually grow a life seed. Sprout that seed, generate pure battle energy, and congratulations, you're a real knight. Tier 2 and 3 go even crazier. Blood Awakening, Battle Aura, titled Knight Territory. But that's future Hog's problem. The book was thick because every Kalensa ancestor who'd successfully practiced it had scribbled their personal notes and tips in the margins. Generations of, here's what worked for me, and Don't do this or your kidneys will explode. Wisdom packed into one sheepskin volume. The core instructions were short, but written like ancient poetry, beautiful and completely confusing. Thank God for the ancestral cliff notes. The wind dragon technique isn't hard to learn. That's the good news. The bad news? It's outrageously expensive. You need resources, lots of them, to fuel the body transformation, which explains why my family went broke and extinct simultaneously. Imagine having the sports car of magical bloodlines, but needing premium fuel that costs more than most families earn in a decade. That was the Kalinsa curse, the strongest breathing technique on the continent, attached to a price tag that bankrupted everyone who tried to use it. But I had something no Kalinsa before me ever had, a cheat system that could pump my stats directly, a magic inventory that doubled as a portable armory and refrigerator, and the reckless optimism of a man who already died once and figured everything from here on out was bonus time. Hiding in a dead mercenary company's barracks, eating stolen bread, reading my family's ancient dragon manual by moonlight. If you'd told cancer-riddled, game-addicted me from my old life that this would be my afterlife, I'd have died laughing. Which, technically, I did. So I cracked open the Wind Dragon breathing manual expecting some mystical enlightenment, and instead got the worst financial news of my entire 2 lives. Turns out, practicing this legendary family technique is basically like owning a Ferrari that runs on liquid gold. The breathing method works by sucking magical energy from the air, refining it through your blood, and slowly upgrading your body. They literally call it blood exchange. Sounds metal. Is metal. Problem? Your body burns through its own vitality doing this, and regular food can't replenish it fast enough. You need magical potions, enchanted fruit, monster meat. Basically a grocery list that costs more than most people's houses. My ancestors helpfully noted that at the apprentice night stage, you need at least 1 bottle of beginner life potion per month. Each bottle, several hundred gold coins. I have 8 gold coins and a stolen leather bathrobe. I'd need to rob every Crow gang member in the city for roughly the next 400 years to afford a single month of training supplies. Now I understood why my dad never let the original Hog touch this manual. Not because he was cruel, because he was protecting his son from the world's most addictive trap. Once you start practicing and feel that sweet power flowing, you can't stop. But without proper resources, you're basically eating your own life force. My dad learned that lesson the hard way. He practiced without enough supplies, damaged his core vitality, watched his strength slowly drain away over years, and died as a shadow of what he once was. Heartbreaking, honestly. Even I felt a pang for a man I never actually met. But here's where MY's situation gets delicious. My cheat system changes the entire equation. Every time I level up and dump points into Constitution, my blood vitality replenishes and grows like crazy. The system basically is my infinite supply of magical protein shakes. Where every Kalinsa before me needed expensive potions to fuel the breathing technique, I just needed to keep killing things and leveling up. The ancestors would be weeping with jealousy. So I started practicing. 9 inhales, 1 exhale. 8 shallow breaths, 1 deep. The exhale had to cascade out like a waterfall, smooth, powerful, 0 interruption. Complete 1 full cycle, and you've succeeded. I failed, and failed, and failed, and failed some more. Hundreds of times over 3 days. Imagine trying to pat your head, rub your stomach, juggle, and ride a unicycle simultaneously while breathing in a pattern that feels completely unnatural. That's the Wind Dragon breathing method, beginner edition. The easy version. 4th morning, boom. I nailed it. Cold energy rushed into my lungs, transformed into a scorching river flowing through every vein. And suddenly my entire body felt lighter, sharper, fundamentally better. This wasn't like the system's stat boosts, which felt like getting inflated with a bike pump. This was evolution. My cells were upgrading themselves. According to my ancestors' notes, fully trained apprentice knights develop skin tough as cowhide that arrows can't pierce. I was only at step 1 and already felt like a different species. And the power was intoxicating. No wonder my dad couldn't stop even when it was killing him. This stuff is magical crack. The wooden box also held 3 bonus manuals: Whirlwind Slash for swords, Thrust for spears, and Blood Shadow Slash. A proper knight-level killing technique requiring actual battle energy to use, filed under Goals for the distant future. The family apparently once owned over 100 combat manuals. Now we're down to 3 plus the breathing method. From 5-course royal banquet to leftover scraps. The Kalensa decline summarized in one sad little box. With my body juiced up on dragon breathing, I threw myself into sword training like a man possessed. 10 straight days of nothing but swing, slash, repeat, eat bread from my magic refrigerator inventory, sleep 4 hours, swing some more. My single-handed weapon proficiency climbed steadily until it hit 100 and, just like with archery, swordsmanship, beginner mastery appeared on my stat screen. My brain downloaded over a year of phantom training memories in an instant. Sword speed doubled. Combat power roughly doubled. My body restructured itself again, strengthening every muscle involved in swordplay. But Whirlwind Slash still hadn't unlocked. I was so close I could taste it, like having a sneeze stuck halfway. 2 more days of grinding, and at proficiency 110, it finally popped. Whirlwind Slash. Beginner mastery. 3 years of simulated training memories crashed into my skull. The technique wasn't just an attack. It included a spinning evasion footwork pattern built into the move itself. Attack and dodge packaged together like a medieval combo meal. My 5 senses sharpened dramatically. Not quite superhero level. Hear a butterfly fart from 3 miles away, but close. I could practically feel the air moving around me. One weird discovery, though, my 100+ points of proficiency only applied to swords. Picking up an axe or a mace felt like being a beginner again. The system counted each weapon type separately under the single-handed weapons umbrella, meaning if I wanted axe mastery, I need to grind another 100 points from scratch just for axes. Complete waste of time when I already had a perfectly good sword specialty. So 2 weeks hiding in a dead mercenary company's barracks turned me from starving teenager who fainted running from wolves into a dual specialty fighter with beginner mastery in both archery and swordsmanship, an ancient dragon breathing technique actively rebuilding my body at the cellular level, and combat reflexes sharp enough to almost hear attacks coming before they land. All I needed now was 10 gold coins for the night exam, away past the Crow gang who definitely wanted me dead, and roughly a lifetime's worth of luck. 2 out of 3, I could probably manage. 12 days to master Whirlwind Slash. The Kalensa family's legendary first founder, supposedly a generational genius, took half a year. My system basically handed me 3 years of sword training in less than 2 weeks, while I squatted in a dead mercenary company's bedroom eating bread like a fancy homeless person. If my ancestors could see me now, they'd either be proud or furious that they spent decades grinding what I speed ran during breakfast. One annoying catch, though, Whirlwind Slash drained stamina like a bathtub with no plug. 30 minutes of combat, and I'm done, gasping like a fish on land. Also, I noticed the system stat numbers don't actually reflect my real strength anymore. My constitution still says 9, but between the breathing technique, sword mastery, and Whirlwind Slash upgrades, my actual power had roughly doubled beyond what the number showed. The system points are basically bonus juice on top of whatever I earned through real training. Like tipping extra on an already good meal. My food ran out. 2 weeks of hiding and training burned through everything, especially since the dragon breathing method turned me into a calorie-devouring machine. So at dusk I snuck out, speed walked to the nearest bakery, bought bread and jerky, and zipped back to my hideout. What I didn't know was that the Crow gang had been hunting me this entire time. They'd flipped the outer city upside down looking for my face. When brute force failed, some actually clever person in their organization had the bright idea of staking out food shops and threatening shopkeepers into snitching. The second I showed up at that bakery, I was spotted. I moved too fast for their tail to follow directly, but they narrowed down my general area and, being cockroaches who know every crack in this city, quickly figured out I was hiding in the abandoned mercenary compound. Next morning, I'm washing my face at the courtyard well, mentally planning another peaceful day of sword practice, when suddenly, footsteps. Lots of them, coming from everywhere. Ha ha ha. Found you, little rat. A big guy in a black robe with a white crow embroidered on his chest. Not the sleeve like the regular grunts, the chest, meaning this was a district boss. Kicked the gate open with 15+ gang members pouring in behind him. More climbed over the walls. I was surrounded. The East District Crowhead himself. Basically middle management in the criminal underworld, but deadly serious about protecting his gang's ego. I raised my crappy sword and tried diplomacy one last time. Look, boss, I never wanted beef with you guys. How about we just stop? He laughed so hard his cronies laughed too. Boys, don't kill him quick. Skin him alive. So much for diplomacy. They rushed me all at once, and I unleashed Whirlwind Slash for the first time in actual combat. My body spun like a tornado, sword becoming a blur of light that carved through everything in reach. Blood sprayed. Screams erupted. Bodies dropped. 15 Crow gang members hit the dirt in seconds, and the looks on the survivors' faces were absolutely priceless. Pure, undiluted. We have made a catastrophic error in judgment. He knows combat arts, the Crow head shrieked. Yeah, buddy. Surprise. The skinny orphan kid you've been hunting for 2 weeks trained himself into a killing machine while you were busy intimidating bakers. Everyone scattered instantly. Running away is literally their gang's official policy when facing anyone stronger. Cowardice written right into the bylaws. Beautiful organizational culture. Then my garbage sword snapped in half. Because of course it did. Cheap junk metal couldn't handle the force of real combat techniques. The Crowhead's eyes lit up like it was his birthday. His sword broke. Rush him. Don't let him grab another. Poor fool. I casually tossed the broken blade aside, and a perfectly intact replacement materialized in my hand from my invisible inventory. The color draining from his face was genuinely one of the most satisfying things I've experienced in either lifetime. I resumed slicing through his boys like a hot knife through terrified butter. The Crow head did what Crow gang leaders do best, turned and sprinted. I cleaned up the last 2 runners with my sword, then swapped to my bow in one fluid motion and put an arrow through the boss's neck at 50 paces. He flopped forward mid-stride and stayed down. Had to kill them all. They'd seen my inventory trick, the magical weapon swap. Leaving witnesses who knew about my secret storage ability was not an option. Harsh, but this world runs on harsh. Looting time was productive. The Crow head carried a proper single-edged broadsword. Heavy, thick, 10-fold forged steel with visible craftsmanship. Compared to my disposable trash swords, this thing was a masterpiece. I also grabbed every wallet, weapon, and anything useful from the bodies. Most of them were almost as broke as the first 2 I'd killed, because apparently being a career criminal in this city pays about as well as being a career victim. Standing among 20-something corpses, I had a moment of clarity about power dynamics in this world. These guys were all non-professionals, not a single trained fighter among them. And I was only at beginner apprentice knight level, the absolute bottom of the professional ladder. They couldn't touch me. If they'd had archers or any actual courage, maybe different story. But gangs like the Crows exist specifically because they're too weak for real combat work. If they had real power, they'd be mercenaries or knights, not alley rats shaking down teenagers. I ditched the blood-soaked armor, bought new clothes, dressed in plain black linen, and headed straight to the Adventurers Guild before the remaining Crows figured out their entire East District leadership was now fertilizer. Who do I bump into? The greatsword guy from last time, Vondero, grinning like Christmas came early. Little brother, I need an archer. Join my team. The job. Rescue a kidnapped kid. Some leather shop owner's son got snatched. Ransom exchange in 6 days at a place called Maple Leaf Valley. 50 gold coin reward split among 10 people. Minimum 3 gold per head. More if you contribute more. 50 gold coins. I needed to leave the city anyway. The math did itself. I'm in. Greenwood Hills, Bandit Central. The place where society's rejects go when they've got nothing left to lose. Runaway slaves with brands on their skin, starving peasants who couldn't pay rent, farmers whose lords squeezed them dry. This world doesn't give second chances to the poor. You either scrape by licking boots, or you grab a rusty sword and start robbing people on forest roads. The Empire's answer? Bounty hunters. Kill or capture bandits. Sell them as slaves. Collect your paycheck. Circle of misery, nice and tidy. And that's exactly where my new team leader, Vondero, wanted us to go. Rescue some leather merchant's kidnapped son from a bandit camp in Maple Leaf Valley. 50 gold reward. Sounded great on paper. Sounded like a death trap in practice. First, though, I had to audition. Some silver-haired archer on the team looked at me like I'd brought a water gun to a war zone. Boss, carrying a bow doesn't make someone a bowman. He actually has to hit things. Thanks for the insight, Grandpa. Really groundbreaking observation. Vondero took me to the training range behind the guild. 50 paces, 5 arrows, 3 hits to pass. I deliberately missed one shot because only an idiot shows their full hand at a poker table. 4 hits, 1 accident. Enough to impress without raising suspicion. Truth was, I could have drilled all 5 into the bullseye blindfolded while doing a handstand, but nobody needed to know that yet. Great talent. You might even learn combat archery someday, Vondero said, patting me on the back like a proud uncle. Buddy, I mastered combat archery 2 weeks ago in an abandoned barracks while eating stolen bread. But sure, someday, after registering the mission with Mars's stolen ID tag, still getting mileage out of that dead man's paperwork, Vondero gathered the full 10-man squad. Prep your supplies. Meet at the South Gate tomorrow morning. I'm hiring a cart. Standard stuff. What I overheard after walking away was considerably less standard. Boss, why do you recruit that broke kid? He's got nothing worth taking, Silverhair whispered. That ungrateful brat earned 2 free gold coins last time and wouldn't even buy me a rum. This time, I'm collecting interest, Vondero chuckled. So the whole recruitment was a setup. Vondero planned to rob me during the mission, probably leave me in a ditch somewhere in bandit territory. This man saw a teenager with a bow and thought, easy payday, instead of potential teammate, second team leader in a row plotting to screw me over. Was there a single honest person in this entire adventuring profession, or was backstabbing literally part of the job description? Whatever. I'd survived wolves, betrayal, a full-body magical renovation, and 20-something Crow gang members. One greedy sword for brains with delusions of cleverness wasn't going to ruin my week. I hit the blacksmith for 2 quivers of iron-tipped arrows, 60 total, 2 silver coins. Then found a quiet inn called the Violet Tavern in the South District, far from any Crow gang territory, and locked myself in a room to count my fortune. And what a fortune it was. Killing criminals pays beautifully. I spread out every wallet I'd stripped from the Crow gang bodies and sorted through the coins like a medieval accountant on payday. Gold went into my system inventory. Silver and copper into my belt pouch. Final tally. 18 gold coins stored safely in my invisible pocket dimension, 65 silver and 98 copper in my physical wallet. 18 gold. 2 weeks ago I had 10 copper coins and was considering eating tree bark. Now I was practically middle class. The night exam cost 10 gold. I could afford it right now with 8 to spare. But the rescue mission promised at least 3 more gold, and I needed every coin I could get for the 50 gold land permit. So the exam could wait. I celebrated with the most extravagant lunch of both my lifetimes. Roast goose, honey-glazed white bread, vegetables, steak, mushroom soup, 3 silver coins of pure culinary joy. My body practically vibrated with happiness. The dragon-breathing method had turned me into a bottomless pit. I burned calories faster than I could shovel food in, and I'd been surviving on dry bread and jerky for 2 weeks. This meal was basically a religious experience. Disappointing discovery. Massacring 20-plus Crow gang members didn't level me up. Apparently, street thugs give garbage experience compared to forest monsters. Makes sense. Those wolves were genuinely dangerous predators. The crows were more like aggressive pigeons with knives. I did gain 5 points of sword proficiency, though, so not a total waste. I pulled out the crow head's broadsword and fell in love. This thing was gorgeous. Same length as my disposable trash swords, but wider blade, better steel, multiple forge foldings visible in the metal grain. Tapped it, and it sang. A clean, beautiful ring that made my heart flutter. Worth at least 20 gold on the market, but selling it would be insanity. My crappy swords kept snapping mid-combat because they couldn't handle the force of whirlwind slash. This beauty could actually keep up with my techniques. Spent the rest of the day in my tiny room practicing sword forms with my new weapon. The broadsword felt like an extension of my arm, heavier than the old swords, but in a satisfying way, like upgrading from a plastic fork to actual silverware. Hit a frustrating wall, though. Once proficiency passes 100, basic techniques barely move the needle anymore. Only real combat arts push the numbers up at a decent rate. But spamming whirlwind slash burns through stamina like wildfire, which means eating mountains of food to recover, which means spending money I was trying to save. Train harder, eat more, spend more, need to earn more, take riskier jobs, train harder. The hamster wheel of medieval self-improvement. Tomorrow I'd ride south with a team led by a man who planned to rob me. toward a valley full of bandits who kidnapped children for ransom, carrying a dead man's identity and a secret magical inventory full of weapons and wolf money. Just another Tuesday in my new life. I needed a spear, I missed noodles from my past life, and I had a bag full of dead men's weapons to sell. Priorities. After a dinner of beef stew and potatoes, decent but tragically noodle-free, I stuffed 14 short axes and 10 swords into a cloth sack like the world's most suspicious Santa Claus, threw on my hooded cloak, and snuck out to Black Rock City's legendary criminal shopping mall. 3 silver got me past the bouncer at a red lantern-lit doorway. Behind it, a narrow stone corridor so claustrophobic it felt like walking through a giant's throat, twisting through 2 turns before spitting me into a bustling underground marketplace glowing crimson. Hundreds of hooded figures browsing weapons, potions, and things I didn't want to examine too closely. Every shady transaction in this city funneled through here, and somewhere in the inner city, some fat noble was collecting rent on all of it. Found a weapons dealer, dumped my murder bag on his counter, and negotiated like a man who'd watched enough pawn shop reality TV in his previous life. Started at 32 gold, talked him up to 34 plus a free iron spear. The weapons were worth double that on the legitimate market, but stolen goods from dead gang members aren't exactly receipt-friendly merchandise. I grabbed my new spear, 2.5 meters of black iron, perfect for grinding proficiency, and walked out 52 gold coins rich. 52. The land permit cost 50. I could technically apply right now. But 2 lifetimes of common sense screamed that showing up to untamed wilderness with just a permit and a positive attitude was basically volunteering for a fancy funeral. The 3 frontier options were all nightmares. Northern Blood Plateau, where orcs raided constantly, Southern Death Swamp, where no pioneer survived 3 years, or the Eastern Wasteland. Orc country plus monsters plus goblins plus, allegedly, undead. Eastern Wasteland was somehow the safe choice, which told you everything about this empire's real estate market. Successfully establishing a territory required a proper knight leading a 200-man militia backed by thousands of settlers. Noble families' second sons pulled it off because daddy bankrolled the operation. I had 0 soldiers, 0 settlers, 0 backing, and a system that let me carry wolves in my pocket. Money first, army second, kingdom eventually, noodles someday. The black market was basically a medieval Amazon with worse return policies and more murder. While browsing, I stumbled across some old guy selling copies of a shield combat technique called Spin Guard, 10 handwritten duplicates spread on a blanket like bootleg DVDs. He wanted 30 gold each. For a photocopy, I offered 3. He nearly had a stroke. We settled on 5, and I walked away with a technique manual that may or may not have been legitimate, feeling like I'd just haggled a street vendor down from robbery, too mild. Scam. Then I dropped 8 gold on an arm shield, leather-covered iron, oil-treated, lacquered. My wallet was crying, but you can't practice shield techniques by strapping a dinner plate to your forearm. Well, you could, but I have standards now. Back in my inn room, I cracked open the shield manual expecting weeks of painful practice. 2 hours later, 2 hours, Spin Guard was mastered. My system proficiency was already over 100 in single-handed weapons, and since the shield technique shared DNA with Whirlwind Slash, my accumulated experience just cascaded into it like water finding a shortcut downhill. My body reshaped itself again. Waist narrower, arms thicker, reflexes sharper. The shield became a spinning blur that felt like a natural extension of my arm. 13 gold coins for a 2-hour power-up. Best shopping trip of either lifetime. My combat toolkit was getting ridiculous. Sword mastery, Whirlwind Slash, Archery mastery, Spin Guard, Dragon breathing technique, and a spear I hadn't even started grinding yet. I was collecting combat arts like trading cards. Next morning I packed strategically, real supplies in a visible backpack stuffed fat to look heavy, actual valuables hidden in my invisible inventory. The backpack was basically a prop, a magician's misdirection, so nobody wondered why the teenager with 4 weapons and a month of food carried nothing on his back. Met Vondero's crew at the south gate. A rickety horse cart pulled by 2 sad-looking mules, 10 adventurers crammed together swapping dirty jokes about which tavern had the prettiest barmaids. I climbed on, sat in the back corner away from everyone, and kept my mouth shut. Half these guys were probably in on Vondero's plan to rob me. The other half were just cannon fodder who didn't know it yet. Somewhere between broke orphan fainting in a wolf cave and riding toward bandit territory with a secret arsenal and 5 mastered combat techniques, my life had gotten genuinely interesting. Terrifying, but interesting. 3 more people showed up at the south gate, and immediately the drama was thicker than the city sewage. First was Gerhard, big guy, mace on his back, built like someone who punched problems until they stopped being problems. Next to him was a woman in a green cloak with a hood, and the tiny sliver of face visible underneath was so pretty that every single adventurer on the cart forgot how to breathe. Lastly, a young guy about my age carrying a sword. Clearly these 3 were their own little squad. The instant Gerhard spotted silver-haired Gale on the cart, his face turned into a thundercloud. Turns out Gale had previously said something deeply inappropriate about Gerhard's sister, the hooded beauty, and they had beef. Vondero jumped in like a medieval HR manager, smoothing things over with all the sincerity of a used cart salesman. Gale meant nothing by it. He just admires your sister. He's got a loose tongue, but a good heart. Meanwhile, Gale was apologizing while his eyeballs were literally glued to the woman's chest like magnets on a refrigerator. He tried to hide it by looking down, but buddy, we all saw that. Subtlety was not this man's strong suit. Gerhard accepted the apology with the warmth of a glacier and the trust of someone watching a fox promise not to eat the chickens. Smart man. I sat there silently cataloging the team dynamics like a social scientist studying a dysfunctional family reunion. Vondero's original 6 were clearly a tight unit. They'd worked together before, finished each other's dirty jokes, shared that comfortable camaraderie of people who'd probably robbed corpses together. Gerhard's trio was the outsider group, and then there was me, the lone wolf sitting in the back corner with a secret magical inventory and absolutely 0 allies. This math was terrible. 6 versus 3 versus 1. If things went sideways, and my track record with adventuring parties suggested they absolutely would, I was the most expendable person on this cart. Gerhard clearly did the same calculation, because when he boarded, he deliberately sat near me instead of Vondero's crew, shielding his sister and the young guy behind his massive frame. Then, at the overnight camp, while Vondero was generously distributing roasted beef jerky to his loyal squad, both Gerhard's group and I separately refused the food and ate our own supplies. 2 groups independently deciding, I'd rather eat stale bread than accept favors from that guy, was either paranoia or excellent survival instincts. I was betting on the second one. That night, Gerhard casually strolled over to my corner. First time working with Vondero, he asked, voice low enough that the others couldn't hear. Yep, their 6 seem very close. We should watch each other's backs. Deal. And just like that, I had my first alliance in this world, forged not over shared values or friendship, but over the mutual understanding that we were probably both on the dinner menu and preferred not to be eaten. Beautiful foundation for a partnership, really. The journey took 2 days through increasingly rough terrain. Once we crossed into Greenwood County, the landscape went from gentle farmland to endless rolling hills covered in dense forest. Bandit country. The kind of place where every shadow could be an ambush and every bird song might be a signal. Even Vondero's chatty crew shut their mouths and started looking nervous. I spent the ride with my eyes closed, secretly practicing my wind dragon breathing technique while everyone probably thought I was napping. Multitasking legend. Vondero laid out the battle plan at camp. 2 of his guys, Horseshoe and Straw Sandal, former hunters from the region, would guide us through the terrain. The kidnappers had specified a sunset exchange at a riverbank in Maple Leaf Valley. Vondero's ground team would pretend to bring the ransom, get close, then attack. Meanwhile, 3 archers, Gale, a guy named Cole, and me, would hide in a maple forest on the hillside overlooking the valley and provide cover fire. Simple plan. Clean plan. I had 0 complaints about the plan. My complaints were about the people executing it. We abandoned the cart at the forest edge and hiked 10 miles through rugged mountain trails until we reached the valley, shaped like a gourd, with a river running. Through the bottom, low scrub and rocks everywhere, and a beautiful maple forest climbing the right slope. Textbook ambush terrain. Cole led us archers up into the maples to set positions. And here's where my paranoia alarm started screaming at full volume. Cole assigned me to one tree, then positioned himself and Gale on 2 trees behind me and to my sides. If I were facing downhill toward the valley, they'd be aiming at my back. I was sandwiched between 2 guys from Vondero's crew with a clean shot at me and 0 way to dodge. Coincidence? In a world where my last 2 team leaders tried to feed me to wolves and rob me respectively? Sure. And I'm secretly a princess. I said nothing, climbed my assigned tree, hung my pack and sword within easy grabbing distance, readied my bow, and settled in to wait. But inside my head, I was running combat scenarios at full speed. If Cole and Gale turned on me, I needed to react before their arrows flew. My inventory swap was my ace, sword to bow in the blink of an eye, shield materializing from thin air. They didn't know about any of it. Overconfidence would be their coffin. The sun crawled toward the horizon, painting everything gold and red. Then, right as the last light was dying, 4 figures emerged at the far end of the valley. Masked, armed, swords, a long knife, a sickle blade, and a spear, leading a horse with a cloth sack draped over its back. The kidnapped kid, presumably still alive inside, 50 paces below me. 4 bandits walking into an ambush they didn't know existed, carrying a hostage toward a rescue team, half of which was probably planning to betray the other half. I knocked an arrow, steadied my breathing, and waited for everything to go wonderfully, catastrophically wrong. Because in my experience, that's not a question of if, just when. Called it so hard. The second Vondero walked straight past the ambush zone toward the kidnappers like they were old drinking buddies. I knew this whole rescue mission was faker than his knight's honor. The bandits didn't flinch, didn't raise weapons, didn't even look nervous. They just casually pulled off their masks and joined Vondero's crew like co-workers meeting for lunch. Because that's exactly what they were. The entire rescue was a trap designed to catch Gerhard's sister. That creep Gale wanted her, Vondero wanted first dibs, and the kidnapping victim was just bait to lure Gerhard's group into the middle of nowhere where nobody would hear them scream. The ransom job, the team recruitment, the fake chivalry, all theater. Even recruiting me was just Vondero being petty about a cup of rum I never bought him. He literally organized a fake rescue mission partially out of revenge for one rejected drink. The pettiness levels in this world were genuinely impressive. Meanwhile, up in my maple tree, 2 arrows came whistling at me from behind. Gale and Cole, right on schedule. Here's the thing about trying to assassinate someone who's been expecting assassination since breakfast. It doesn't work great. The moment Vondero left the kill zone, I'd already strapped my arm shield on. When those arrows flew, I spun around the tree trunk like a gymnast and caught both on iron. The sound of arrowheads bouncing off my shield was basically applause for my paranoia. Cole got 1 arrow back, right between the eyes. Fell out of his tree like a sack of rotten fruit. Gale practically soiled himself. His partner just got 1 shot by the talentless kid, and suddenly hiding behind a tree trunk felt like hiding behind a napkin. He didn't dare peek out. Smart instinct, terrible execution. I just climbed down and walked over to his tree. He panicked, fired 3 arrows blindly. Missed every single one because panicking and aiming don't mix. I fired once. Eyebrow piercing, the fatal kind. 2 dead archers, 0 scratches on me. Looted both bodies in seconds. Gale's composite bow was a massive upgrade, easily adding 50 paces to my killing range. My old bow was like throwing sharp sticks compared to this beauty. Also grabbed their wallets because at this point looting corpses was basically my retirement plan. Down in the valley, things had gone very badly for Gerhard. Turned out Vondero wasn't just a slimy con artist. He was a genuine combat professional with a knight-level technique called heavy slash. 1 overhead strike sent Gerhard tumbling across the riverbed. Spitting blood, his mace cracking from the impact. Gerhard was strong, but fighting a technique user without techniques of your own was like boxing a gorilla with 1 hand tied behind your back. Vondero's crew closed in on Gerhard's sister and the young guy, grinning like hyenas cornering wounded prey. Gerhard threw himself back in, bleeding from the mouth, trying to buy them time to escape while knowing he was probably going to die. Then my arrows started arriving. First bandit dropped with a shaft through his neck before anyone heard the bowstring. Second one followed. Third. Fourth. Every arrow found a throat. The bandits panicked. This wasn't some amateur picking them off from a hillside. This was professional-grade combat archery raining death from the tree line at a rate they couldn't process. Vondero recognized it immediately. Fall back. That's night-level bow technique. He abandoned beating on Gerhard and dove behind a boulder, screaming for his surviving men to take cover. Only 2 made it. The 30-pace dash from the riverbed to the rocks became a shooting gallery, and most of them didn't finish the sprint. Gerhard's companions dragged him into the maple forest while Vondero cowered behind his rock, probably rethinking every life choice that led to him trying to rob a system-powered archer with a grudge. My first instinct was to disappear, slip away in the chaos, let Vondero live with the mystery. But then I thought about it for exactly 3 seconds and realized that was stupid. This man had connections in Black Rock City. He knew my face, my name, my adventurer registration. If I let him walk away, he'd spend the rest of his miserable life hunting me down, and I'd spend mine looking over my shoulder. In a city where I was already dodging the remnants of the Crow Gang, adding a vengeful night technique-wielding psychopath to my enemy list was terrible portfolio management. Vondero had to die today. Him and his 2 surviving roaches hiding behind that boulder. So there I crouched in the maples, new composite bow in hand, quiver full, 5 senses razor-sharp from dragon breathing, watching 2 bandits and a fake knight captain huddle behind a rock and pray I'd go away. I was not going away. Vondero, hiding behind his boulder like the world's most armed cockroach, actually had the nerve to negotiate. Hog buddy, I'll give you the whole reward. And hey, that girl, you can have her first. What do you say? This man just tried to have me assassinated 10 minutes ago, and now he's offering me women and money like a medieval game show host. The audacity was almost admirable. Almost. Meanwhile, Gerhard was dying in the maple forest. 2 hits from Vondero's heavy slash technique had turned his insides into soup. He was coughing up blood with chunks of organ in it, which was exactly as horrifying as it sounds, and he knew his time was up. His last wish wasn't revenge or glory. It was begging me to protect his younger brother Eric and sister Aaliyah. I hesitated. We'd known each other for 2 days. Our entire alliance was born from mutual paranoia on a bumpy cart ride. But watching his siblings sobbing while he literally held his guts together with willpower, yeah, that got me. Plus, and I'm not proud of how quickly this thought followed, I needed soldiers for my system's party slots, and 2 loyal followers falling into my lap felt suspiciously convenient. Gerhard sweetened the pot. His family's blue falcon breathing technique, a night combat art called Heavy Strike, and 3 gold coins. An entire dying family's inheritance, handed over for 1 promise. Fine. I, Hog Kalensa, swear to protect them as long as they follow me. Gerhard's eyes went wide. You're the Kalensa, the Wind Dragon family's young lord? He clearly recognized my family name, which meant there was history here I didn't understand yet. But before I could ask, he coughed up what looked like his remaining liver, and that was that. Then something beautiful happened. My system pinged. Camp follower Aaliyah and Swadino recruit Eric. Loyalty 80. Request to join your party. Accept? Yes. 1,000 times yes. My first 2 party members, recruited through the time-honored method of watching their brother die and making dramatic promises over his cooling body. Not exactly a heartwarming recruitment brochure, but beggars can't be choosers. Aaliyah tried to stop me from going after Vondero alone. Young lord, don't. Sweet concern, terrible timing. Night was coming fast. In darkness, Vondero and his 2 surviving roaches would escape, and I'd spend the rest of my life checking for knives in my back. This ended now. I dropped my bow, drew my broadsword, and walked toward the boulder. Vondero saw me coming without ranged weapons and practically exploded with joy. You dare fight me in close combat? I'll split you in half. He launched himself skyward. This seemed to be his signature move, the aerial overhead chop, and brought heavy slash crashing down like a meteor made of steel. The man hit hard. Even deflecting with spin guard, the impact rattled my skeleton and sent internal shockwaves through my organs. Blood leaked from my mouth. My left arm went numb. But I didn't need to overpower him. I needed to outlast him. Every time he swung that massive 2-handed greatsword with full technique force, he burned through stamina like a bonfire eating paper. I kept dodging with my spinning footwork, blocking what I couldn't dodge, and closing distance before retreating again. Never letting him rest. Never giving him a clean hit. Playing the most annoying game of tag in medieval history. 20 swings. My whole body screamed in pain. Internal bleeding spreading, ribs probably cracked. But then, system notification. The bandits I'd killed earlier had pushed me to level 3. One fresh attribute point. I dumped it into Constitution mid-fight, like swallowing a healing potion, felt warm energy flood my veins, and my injuries started knitting themselves together in real time. Vondero didn't notice. He was too busy gasping for air. 25 heavy slashes. His arms were shaking. His jumps got lower. His technique got sloppy. The monster who'd been ragdolling Gerhard like a toy was now a sweating, wheezing mess who could barely lift his own sword. I struck. One whirlwind slash, body spinning like a cyclone, blade carving a perfect arc through his exposed throat. He stood there for a moment, eyes bulging with disbelief, mouth moving. I could read his lips. You had another combat technique. 3 mastered techniques from a 14-year-old, broke kid he'd tried to rob over a cup of rum. That expression of pure, dying shock was worth more than any gold coin. His 2 surviving bandits bolted the instant he dropped. I caught them in 3 seconds flat. Both hit the ground begging. Mercy. We were forced into this. Vondero made us. Where's your hideout? Eagle Beak Valley. The first one screamed. It's Eagle Beak Valley. 5 miles from here. I'll take you there personally. The second one added helpfully. I looked at the second guy. Sorry. You answered too slow. 1 slash. Done. The surviving bandit went so pale, he practically became transparent. I had him tied up with belts stripped from corpses. Eric handled the binding, while Aaliyah stood guard. Both of them efficiently following my orders like they'd been doing it their whole lives. Standing in that valley surrounded by bodies, blood drying on my sword, 2 new followers at my side, and a trembling captive at my feet, I took stock of the situation. I'd walked into a trap designed to kill me, killed everyone who said it, gained a level, recruited my first party members, inherited a second family's breathing technique and combat manual, and located a bandit hideout ripe for raiding. Not bad for an afternoon that started with 2 arrows aimed at my skull. So Aaliyah dropped the biggest plot twist of the week on me while I was still wiping blood off my chin. Turns out her grandfather was a sworn guardian knight of my family, the Kalinses, the Wind Dragons. He'd been a slave whom my ancestors trained into a full knight, and he died fighting alongside my grandpa on the Bloody Plateau 30 years ago. When my family got stripped of everything, the Barton family lost their knight's land too and spiraled into the same poverty toilet we did. 3 decades later, and they still considered themselves our loyal vassals. Her brother Gerhard had recognized my family name with his dying breath and looked happier about that than about, being alive. Which really put my problems in perspective. Here was a family that lost everything because of their loyalty to my family, and their last surviving members were kneeling in a blood-soaked valley swearing allegiance to a broke 14-year-old in stolen clothes. Either that was the most beautiful loyalty I'd ever witnessed, or the most tragically misplaced faith in history. Probably both. I did the whole knighting ceremony from the original Hog's memories, tapped their shoulders with my broadsword, spoke some dramatic words about fighting side by side. Full medieval theater. This world runs on ceremony and oaths the way my old world ran on contracts and handshakes, and if I was going to be a lord someday, I might as well start acting like one. The kidnapped merchant's son was alive, stuffed in a sack on the horse like a very expensive piece of luggage. Half-conscious, confused, terrified. I told him we were adventurers, hired by his dad, and left out the part where his rescue mission was actually a trap orchestrated by the same guy who probably kidnapped him in the first place. Some details just give people nightmares. Eric and Aaliyah buried Gerhard in the maple forest with impressive composure. They cried, sure, but they handled it like people who'd already watched their entire world collapse multiple times. Grief veterans. They whispered promises at his grave about following me and restoring their family's honor, then stood up, dried their eyes, and got back to work. Meanwhile, I was looting every corpse in the valley like a one-man recycling center. Wallets, weapons, belts, anything useful. Vondero and his crew could feed the wolves tonight. Circle of life. The hike back to our hidden cart took twice as long in the dark, even with decent moonlight. Our little caravan looked ridiculous. Eric leading with a sword, Aaliyah pulling. A horse loaded with dead men's weapons, me escorting a tied-up bandit, and a traumatized merchant's son clinging to my shadow like a baby duckling who'd imprinted on the scariest thing in the valley. The cart driver nearly fainted when he saw us. Where's Captain Vondero? Dead. Everyone's dead except us. He sighed the sigh of a man who'd driven enough adventurers into the wilderness to know that most of them don't come back, then shut up and stoked his campfire. Professional indifference. I respected it. Aaliyah immediately started fussing over me like I was royalty, soaking bread in hot water, seasoning jerky with salt, handing me food before I even asked. She was a little awkward about it, clearly not used to the servant role, but the effort was genuine and honestly. After weeks of feeding myself from a magical pocket dimension while hiding in abandoned buildings, having someone care about whether I ate warm food hit different. I let her. Eric volunteered for first watch. I assigned the rescued merchant's son second watch. Might as well make himself useful instead of sitting there trembling, and told them both to wake me before dawn. I had a bandit hideout to clean out. Lying under wool blankets that Aaliyah had thoughtfully tucked around me, I pulled up my character sheet in the darkness. Level 3 now. Constitution 10, Intelligence still 6. Apparently mass combat didn't make me smarter, just tougher. Weapon proficiency had ticked up nicely. Swords at 120, Archery at 112. 20 stored weapon points accumulating like a savings account. And there in the party tab, 2 names, Eric and Aaliyah. My first followers. My army of 2. Their system descriptions were hilariously underwhelming. Camp follower Aaliyah and Swadino recruit Eric. Not exactly elite Dragon Knight material. But everyone starts somewhere, and at least the system confirmed they were genuinely loyal. Loyalty 80 out of presumably 100 was solid for people I'd known for approximately 6 hours. The real discovery was that adding that 1 constitution point mid-fight against Vondero hadn't just restored my stamina, it actively healed my internal injuries. By morning, the damage from 25 heavy/impacts had mostly repaired itself. That was huge. It meant attribute points weren't just permanent upgrades. They were emergency healing potions I could pop during combat. Mental note tattooed on my brain. Always save at least 1 point for emergencies. Past me who dumped all 4 points at once in a wolf cave was an idiot. Current me was slightly less of an idiot. Dawn crept in cold and gray. I woke up feeling genuinely refreshed for the first time since arriving in this world. Fed, healed, rested, and flanked by 2 sworn followers who called me Young Lord, without a trace of irony. The bandits' hideout at Eagle Beak Valley was 5 miles away, presumably full of stolen goods, maybe more captives, and definitely more experience points waiting to be harvested. I untied the captive bandit's legs, kept his hands bound, and told Eric and Aaliyah to stay with the camp. They protested. Aaliyah especially looked like she wanted to argue, but I wasn't risking my only 2 party members on a cave-clearing mission when I didn't know what was inside. Besides, if the hideout was full of non-professional bandits like the ones I'd just mowed through in the valley, this was basically a grocery run. Walk in, collect loot, walk out. The universe owed me at least 1 easy morning after the week I'd had. Left my 2 brand new followers at camp because leaving Aaliyah alone with a suspicious cart driver and a horse full of stolen weapons was basically asking for trouble. She wanted Eric to come with me, but someone needed to guard camp, and the 16-year-old girl wasn't going to intimidate anyone if that beefy cart driver decided to play entrepreneur with our loot. Fun fact, I'm 14 and already the boss of 2 people older than me. The system-enhanced growth spurts had pushed me close to 6 feet tall, so at least I didn't look like a child commanding teenagers. Small victories. The bandits' hideout at Eagle Beak Valley was genuinely impressive in the worst possible way. 2 hours of mountain hiking through dense forest, then a narrow canyon with a river running through it, squeezing tighter and tighter until the cliff walls nearly touched overhead, forming a natural tunnel so dark you could lose your hand in front of your face. Without my enhanced eyesight, I'd have walked face first into their hidden fortress wall blocking the entire passage. The perfect bandit lair, invisible, defensible, and deeply annoying to assault. I made my captive, Froled, walk ahead as bait. He pretended to be cooperative while obviously plotting to scream for help the second he got close enough. When the 2 sentries on the wall recognized him and relaxed, I introduced them to my composite bow from the shadows. 2 arrows, 2 throats, 2 bodies slumping behind the battlements. Froled stood frozen, reconsidering every life choice that led him to this canyon with an archer who apparently never missed necks. Past the wall, the canyon twisted through another dark passage with a third hidden archer perched in the cliff. He saw Froled, started to wave hello, and ate an arrow mid-greeting. At this point, my kill-to-arrow ratio was approaching perfection, and my reputation among dead sentries was legendary. Then the tunnel opened up and my jaw dropped. Behind all that claustrophobic darkness was a hidden paradise, a 2-kilometer oval valley with a waterfall cascading from the northern mountains, a river winding through the bottom, and 100 acres of wheat fields stretching across the valley floor. Stone houses climbed up a hillside, crowned by a 2-story stone tower. An actual self-sustaining settlement hidden inside a mountain, complete with farmland and architecture. These bandits had better real estate than most legitimate nobles I'd encountered. 20-something ragged slaves worked the fields in tatters, looking like scarecrows that had given up on life. They scattered into the trees the instant Froled started screaming, "Enemy attack! Third boss, save me!" as he sprinted toward the stone tower in a last desperate bid for survival. He underestimated my range. One arrow in his back and Frold's sprinting career ended permanently. The valley went dead silent. Stone tower, no movement. Houses, no movement. Just me standing at the canyon mouth like an idiot with zero cover in a wide-open valley, completely visible to anyone on that hilltop. Tactical nightmare. So I strapped on my arm shield, drew my sword, and walked straight up the stone path toward the tower because subtlety had left the building approximately 4 dead centuries ago. Whoosh! A javelin screamed out of the tower doorway straight at my face. Not a thrown by an amateur javelin. A thrown by someone who has mastered javelin combat techniques javelin. The speed and accuracy were terrifying. There, third boss, was a genuine professional. Spin guard saved my skull. I deflected it sideways and kept charging. 3 more javelins came rocketing out in rapid succession. Bang, bang, bang. Each one hammering my shield hard enough to rattle my teeth. This guy threw spears like a human ballista. I burst through the doorway, and 2 bandits ambushed me from both sides. Whirlwind Slash handled the first one. Throat opened before he finished his swing, while my shield knocked the second one's blade away. Then another javelin came at my neck from inside the building. I twisted my body into what must have looked like a contortionist having a seizure and dodged by literally millimeters. The spearhead carved a bloody line across my throat that burned like fire. 1 inch to the left, and this story would have ended with. And then Hog's head fell off. I closed the distance before Javelin Boss could grab another spear. Up close, his combat skills were pathetic. All his talent was in throwing, not fighting. My broadsword ended the discussion quickly. The last bandit bolted out the door screaming. Sword vanished into inventory. Bow appeared in hands. Arrow flew. Bandit tumbled down the hillside. Routine at this point. I touched the cut on my neck, and my fingers came back red. That javelin specialist had come closer to killing me than Vondero did. Note to self. Never underestimate a guy whose entire combat strategy is throw sharp things really fast at people's faces. Standing on the hilltop overlooking my freshly conquered bandit paradise, I bellowed at the slaves hiding in the tree-line to come out. They crawled over and collapsed at my feet in a trembling, kneeling mass of malnutrition and terror. 22 human beings who looked like they hadn't eaten a proper meal or worn intact clothing in years. The bandits are dead. You belong to me now. Not exactly a liberation speech that would make history books, but this world ran on ownership. These people were property. The bandits took them. Now I had them. Cruel system, but at least under my management they'd eat actual food and probably not get beaten for fun. Low bar, but it was higher than what they'd been living under. So there I stood. A 14-year-old with a bleeding neck, a magic inventory full of dead men's wallets, and a newly acquired farming village hidden inside a mountain, complete. With wheat fields, stone buildings, a defensive wall, and 22 slaves who were terrified of me. From dying of cancer playing video games to medieval landlord in about 3 weeks. Life comes at you fast when you've got a cheat system and absolutely no chill. 22 terrified scarecrows kneeled before me in a hidden mountain paradise, and I became a slave owner before my 15th birthday. Not exactly the career path I'd imagined in either lifetime, but this world had a funny way of throwing moral complexity at you between sword fights. The slave system here was brutally permanent. Magic ink tattooed into the neck. threaded around the carotid artery so deep that trying to remove it meant bleeding to death. 11 of my new collection had that lovely neck decoration. The rest were kidnapped villagers forced into farm labor. All of them looked like they'd been surviving on hatred and table scraps. I gave them a choice that probably sounded too good to be true. Follow me and get fed, clothed, and trained in actual combat techniques, potentially even night-level skills, or take 3 days of food and walk away free. In a world where freedom for a homeless peasant meant starving in a ditch or getting recaptured as someone else's property, this was less of a choice and more of an IQ test. One slave, Iron, immediately perked up like a dog hearing a treat bag rustle. Even slaves can learn night techniques. The hope in his voice physically hurt to hear. I confirmed, and he pledged loyalty so fast I think he broke a speed record. My system dinged 3 times in rapid succession. Iron, Bandak from the Doro Empire, and Nick from the Deck Empire all hit the minimum loyalty threshold and joined my party. 5 slots, 5 filled. My invisible army was at maximum capacity, and I didn't even know how to expand it yet. 8 people chose to leave, mostly kidnapped villagers with families to return to. I gave them food and had Iron escort them out. 3 women with nowhere to go stayed behind, including 2 who'd been the bandits' personal entertainment. Their hollow eyes told stories I didn't want to hear. 5 farm women total remained, 2 of whom could cook. Instantly, the most valuable people in the valley as far as my stomach was concerned. The hideout itself was a gold mine. The underground cellar had enough wheat, barley, oats, and salt to feed everyone for 3 months. The armory held 10 swords, 3 hunting bows, 2 spears, 12 quivers, and 6 javelins. Upstairs in the boss's study, I found the real prize, a copper-plated half-body armor set with cotton lining that fit me perfectly. Massive upgrade from Mars's blood-crusted leather bathrobe I'd been wearing since week 1. And tucked in the corner, a leather pouch containing 30 gold coins. The bandits' retirement fund was now my operating budget. 78 gold coins total. From 10 copper to 78 gold in roughly 3 weeks. If my old world had a financial advisor category for murder and looting, I'd be employee of the month. I appointed Iron as base commander with Bandak and Nick as his deputies. Each of them had trained in at least 1 basic weapon skill, so I assigned them to teach the remaining slaves spear work, archery, and axe fighting respectively. Distributed the weapons, told them to manage the food sensibly, guard the fortress wall, and dispose of the bandit corpses decorating the property. My first executive decisions as a proto-feudal lord, delivered to a workforce of malnourished ex-slaves standing in a wheat field inside a secret mountain valley. Management school would have been proud. The trip back was smooth. 1 overnight at a village, then Black Rock City by noon the next day. Snorty, the rescued merchant's kid, had figured out during the journey that I was the one calling the shots despite looking like everyone's younger brother, and he bowed so deep when we arrived that I thought he'd tip over. Split up for efficiency. I took Snorty to cash in the rescue mission at the Adventurers Guild while Aaliyah and Eric sold our surplus weapons at the blacksmith next door. The guild clerk processed the task without a single question about Vondero's absence. Nobody in this profession expects a full headcount return. Handed me 50 gold coins. Done. Old man Hent sobbed over his recovered son like it was a soap opera finale, and I stood there awkwardly accepting gratitude for a rescue that was technically a side effect of me killing the people who tried to kill me first. Aaliyah's weapon sale netted 38 gold after she and Eric wisely kept the best gear for themselves. Fresh swords, bows, and all the arrows. Paid the cart driver his 1 gold coin rental fee and watched him disappear without a backward glance. Smart man knew not to ask questions about missing passengers. Found a quiet inn on a back street, rented 2 rooms, me with Eric, Aaliyah solo, and finally sat down to do the math that mattered. After pooling everything together and handing 7 gold to my followers for new clothes because they looked like medieval disaster survivors, my fortune was sitting pretty at well over 100 gold coins. The night exam cost 10. The land permit cost 50. I could afford both with money to spare. Tomorrow I'd walk into the Knights Guild, prove I was more than a skinny nobody, get my professional certification, and take the first real step toward rebuilding the Wind Dragon legacy. Then we'd head back to Eagle Beak Valley, my secret mountain base complete with farmland, fortress, and a small army of trainees who were probably at this very moment learning which end of a spear was the pointy one. 3 weeks ago, I died playing a video game. Now I had followers calling me Young Lord, a Hidden Valley fortress, nearly 100 gold coins, and combat skills that could drop professional bandits. The original Hog spent his whole short life dreaming about restoring his family name, and here I was accidentally speedrunning his impossible dream while occasionally missing instant noodles. I told Aaliyah and Eric about Eagle Beak Valley, the secret mountain fortress, the farmland, the slaves turned trainees, all of it. Their eyes went wide like kids hearing about a surprise birthday party, except the party involved a hidden bandit lair and indentured agriculture. Aaliyah immediately switched into logistics mode, planning supply purchases like a medieval quartermaster. Girl was born for organization. I assigned them shopping duty for the next day while I handled the night certification exam. Simple plan. Clean plan. Plans in my life never survive contact with reality. We stepped out of the inn and walked straight into a wall of city guards, a Crow Gang district boss pointing his grubby finger at me, and a genuine knight sitting on a warhorse looking down at us like we were insects at a picnic. South District Security Chief Phaedru Kuba, an actual real knight with blood energy and everything. When he spoke, his voice hit my chest like a thunderclap because he'd pumped supernatural power into his vocal cords. Show off. The Crow Gang boss beside him was practically vibrating with smug satisfaction, having apparently bought this little arrest with 50 gold coins and years of regular bribes. Justice for sale, medieval edition. Did you do it? Phaedru boomed. I could have lied, but lying to a knight backed by 40 guards seemed counterproductive. Yes, but I'm not guilty. They attacked a noble first, me. Hog Kalinsa, Wind Dragon family. I flipped out my family crest like a medieval badge flash, mithril gleaming in the sunlight. The crow boss nearly tripped over himself, rushing to counter. He's a broke noble. No land, no title worth respecting. 20 dead bodies, Your Honor. 20. Phaedru thought about it for roughly 2 seconds, weighed his annual Crow Gang bribe income against the headache of one penniless aristocrat, and barked, "Take him away," like I'd personally insulted his mother. I went quietly. Fighting a real knight would have been suicide served with a side of stupidity. I whispered to Aaliyah and Eric to stay calm and stay put. Then let the guards drag me off to a lovely underground dungeon that smelled like despair had a mold problem. My broadsword got confiscated, but everything else was safely tucked in my invisible inventory where no medieval pat-down could find it. Sitting in that damp cell, I'll admit I was worried. Not panicking. I'd been through worse, but definitely concerned that my brilliant strategy of reveal noble status, walk free, had face-planted spectacularly. The Crow Gang had this corrupt knight wrapped around their finger tighter than a wedding ring. What I didn't know, sitting in that moldy darkness, was that my arrest had triggered a political earthquake upstairs. See, there's a thing about being the last living descendant of a founding duke family. Even when you're broke and homeless, certain very powerful people pay attention to whether you're alive or dead. Not because they care about you. Oh no, but because killing you creates problems for whoever does it. The next morning, a very fat, very important man named Phillips Buffett, the city's chief administrator and the current lord's uncle, came waddling into the security office so fast he was wheezing. Phaedru nearly dislocated his spine bowing. I asked the Kalinsa boy still alive? Phillips gasped, looking like a man who'd just realized he'd accidentally sat on a landmine. Turns out, certain powerful figures in the Empire wanted the Wind Dragon bloodline to quietly go extinct. Die in a monster fight? Fine. Starve in a ditch? Acceptable. Get executed by the Wind Eagle family's own security chief? Catastrophically not fine. That would give rival noble factions the perfect excuse to brand the Buffett family as murderers of a founding bloodline and dismantle them politically. Phaedru had nearly handed their enemies a loaded crossbow aimed at his own family's heart. Phillips didn't yell. He didn't need to. He simply explained, in the gentle tone of a man describing exactly how you almost destroyed everything, that the Crow Gang had been a tumor on this city long enough. Attacking a noble, even a broke one, was a capital offense under imperial law. Time to use that excuse and exterminate every last crow in all 4 city districts simultaneously. Phaedru, who 5 minutes ago was planning my public hanging, pivoted to enthusiastic cooperation faster than a weather vane in a tornado. I'll release him immediately, sir. No, 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 dear Phaedrew. We do this properly. Phillips had a politician's instinct for turning disasters into opportunities. The cover story: Hogg was detained deliberately to lull the Crow gang into false security while the city organized a coordinated strike. His imprisonment wasn't punishment, it was bait. And for his cooperation, the city would award him 10 gold coins. Somewhere in that dungeon, I was stress-eating invisible inventory bread and wondering if my 2 followers were okay. Meanwhile, the entire Crow gang organization that had terrorized Black Rock City's outer districts was being rounded up, stripped of assets, and sentenced, leaders executed, regular members enslaved. The gang that had chased me through alleys, staked out bakeries to find me, and bribed a knight to hang me was being erased from existence because they'd picked the wrong skinny teenager to mug. The cosmic irony was magnificent. Those first 2 Crow thugs who cornered me in a dark alley over 2 gold coins had inadvertently set off a chain reaction that would destroy their entire organization, get their district boss killed, cost their secret leader his head, and strip a corrupt knight of his best income source. All because they looked at a malnourished 14-year-old and thought, easy target. In this world, being the last of a legendary bloodline was simultaneously the worst and best insurance policy imaginable. Everyone wanted me dead, but nobody could afford to be the one caught doing it. I was basically an endangered species that people kept accidentally trying to poach. 10 gold coins for spending 1 night in a cell while the city did my dirty work for me. I'd have stayed a week for that deal. I walked out of the security office clutching 10 gold coins that a very nervous knight had practically shoved into my hands while delivering the most hilariously rewritten version of recent events I'd ever heard. According to Officer Phaedrew's new and improved narrative, I was never actually arrested. No, no, no. I was strategically detained as part of a brilliant citywide operation to destroy the Crow gang. My imprisonment was bait. I was a hero cooperating with law enforcement. Here's 10 gold for your trouble. Please don't tell anyone I almost hanged you yesterday. The man who'd thundered, "Take him away," with supernatural voice powers was now smiling at me like we were old friends reuniting at a dinner party. Politicians in every universe are the same species. Outside, the streets were absolute chaos. Crow gang members, hundreds of them, being dragged out of buildings, tied together in long chains, and marched toward the Slave Merchants Guild to get that lovely magic neck tattoo they'd spent years inflicting on others. Every district hit simultaneously. The organization that had terrorized this city's poor for years was being gutted in a single morning because they'd made the galaxy-brain decision to mug an orphan teenager who happened to be the last descendant of a founding imperial dynasty. I still didn't fully understand why I'd been released. Phaedrew clearly wanted me dead last night. Something changed between sundown and sunrise, and that something smelled like high-level politics way above a district security chief's pay grade. Whatever invisible chess game was being played with my life as a piece, I didn't like it. Time to get strong fast, get land faster, and stop being a pawn on someone else's board. Aaliyah and Eric were waiting outside the inn, except not our inn, because the spineless innkeeper had kicked them out the moment I got arrested. They'd spent the night at a different place and came back here hoping I'd show up. The relief on their faces when they saw me walking freely almost made the whole dungeon experience worth it. Almost. That cell still smelled terrible. I handed them 20 gold coins, sneakily pulled from my invisible inventory while pretending to dig through my belt pouch, and sent them shopping. Leather armor for both of them, healing salves, food supplies, everything we'd need for an extended stay at Eagle Beak Valley. My gold stash sat at 118 coins after the shopping budget. From 10 copper to triple digits in under a month. Cancer-riddled video game addict to medieval venture capitalist. What a trajectory. The Knights Guild was everything I'd imagined and more. Marble floors so polished I could see my reflection, carved murals of legendary battles covering every wall, and an atmosphere of solemn importance that made the Adventurers Guild look like a roadside taco stand. This was where the real players registered. 10 gold entry fee, fill out a form with your name and background, then head to the testing yard. The physical test was a joke. Lift a 200-pound stone block over your head. I practically tossed it. Then demonstrate a combat technique. I chose archery because showing off Whirlwind Slash would reveal too many cards. Shot a few arrows. Examiner nodded. Done. Then came the ceremony, and I'll admit, even my cynical two-lifetime soul got a little misty. They led me upstairs to a grand hall dominated by a massive statue of Caesar Glenn, the legendary Sky Knight who'd led humanity's rebellion against the Orc Empire, freed the enslaved human race, and founded the Three Empires. The greatest knight in recorded history, and he'd never even been a noble. Just pure skill, pure courage, pure stubborn refusal to stay conquered. He'd also created the Knights Guild with the radical idea that anyone, even slaves, should be able to learn breathing techniques and combat arts. A beautiful vision that modern society had completely betrayed by hoarding all that knowledge behind aristocratic doors. A silver-armored knight stood beside a white jade monument inscribed with 5 words: loyalty, protection, honor, courage, responsibility. I placed my fist over my heart and swore the knight's oath: loyalty unto death, honor above life, march into hell itself for justice. Heavy words for a guy who'd been eating stolen bread in an abandoned barracks 2 weeks ago, but I meant every one of them. Not for the corrupt system that currently existed, but for the version Caesar Glenn had originally dreamed about. Congratulations, Hog Kalensa. You are now an apprentice knight. They handed me a sheepskin certificate and an iron badge engraved with a sword, lance, and warhorse on the front, my full name on the back. Official, legitimate, real. And then my system updated, and I nearly fell over from excitement. My party capacity had jumped from 5 to 15. Not from leveling up, from my status change. The system scaled my army size based on my social rank and professional standing. Becoming a certified apprentice knight tripled my command capacity overnight, which meant becoming a full knight would probably expand it further. And a titled knight? A baron with actual land? The numbers could be enormous. This changed everything. 15 wasn't just a bigger number. It was the difference between guy with a few followers and guy with an actual squad. Back at Eagle Beak Valley, I had Iron, Bandak, and Nick already in my 5 slots, plus Aaliyah and Eric. 10 more openings. 10 more soldiers I could bind with system loyalty, train with combat techniques, and build into a real fighting force. I practically floated to the Mercenary Guild afterward and registered there too, because mercenary contracts paid better than adventurer jobs, and I needed every coin I could scrape together. Then I met back up with my 2 followers, who'd transformed from ragged refugees into properly equipped fighters. New leather armor, weapons, supplies, and a pack horse loaded with provisions for our mountain hideout. 108 gold coins remaining. A knight's certification in my pocket. A secret valley fortress waiting for me. 15 party slots hungry for recruits. And somewhere in this empire, powerful people were quietly hoping I'd die in some conveniently untraceable way while being very careful not to be the ones holding the knife. Sorry to disappoint, mysterious imperial schemers. This particular endangered species had a cheat system, a dragon-breathing technique, and a to-do list that included building an army and claiming a kingdom. Your move. Fresh out of jail with 10 gilt coins jingling in my pocket, I had 2 errands left in Black Rock City before getting the hell out. Knight certification and mercenary registration. I'd already handled the knight badge yesterday, so today was mercenary day. But first I peeked at what it takes to become a mid-level apprentice knight, and immediately wished I hadn't. Lift 600 pounds over your head. Okay, I was getting close to that. But also demonstrate a mounted combat technique with a polearm. Meaning I needed to fight on horseback. Meaning I needed a horse. Not a sad pack mule, an actual warhorse trained for combat. The cheapest decent warhorse cost more than everything I currently owned, and the legendary Dora warhorses, bred with actual dragon blood, smart enough to read a battlefield, brave enough to charge a monster, cost hundreds of gold each. My family apparently once fielded 1,000 heavy cavalry knights, each in 100-pound plate armor on fully armored warhorses, 1,000 medieval tanks. And somehow this unstoppable war machine of a family still ended up with me as its sole survivor, hiding in bandit caves and haggling over bread prices. The more I learned about the Kalensa glory days, the more depressing my current situation felt. The Mercenary Guild was in North City, which meant I basically jogged across the entire metropolis. Worth it though, because the Mercenary Guild made the Adventurers Guild look like a lemonade stand next to a 5-star restaurant. The building was massive, The atmosphere was heavy with the quiet confidence of people who killed for a living, and the lobby had free rum. Actual rum, not the cheap swill from village taverns. Adventurers got splinter-filled wooden counters and bored clerks. Mercenaries got polished halls, privacy screens between tables, and, I noticed immediately, a gorgeous blonde receptionist whose professional smile could probably disarm a charging orc. She looked at my certification papers, looked at my face, looked back at the papers. "You're 14? "Yes, ma'am." 14, 3 combat techniques, a dragon breathing method, and an invisible pocket dimension full of dead people's wallets. But I just nodded modestly. "At your age, already an apprentice knight. I think you'll become a legendary mercenary someday. The whole continent will tell stories about you." She beamed like a proud aunt at a school play. I did my best. "Aw shucks," impression while internally screaming with joy. She handed me a copper identity tag, lowest rank, rookie mercenary, plus a rulebook called the Mercenary Code. Apparently, I could use this tag to take jobs across all 3 human empires, and completing missions earned points toward rank upgrades with increasingly fancy perks. The mercenary career ladder. Get paid to fight, fight to get promoted to fight bigger things for bigger money. Simple, elegant, and probably fatal for most participants. Then I checked the job board, and my eyeballs nearly melted from the gold numbers. These weren't flower-picking gigs. A frontier baron 500 miles east wanted wolves cleared from his territory. 50 gold just for showing up, plus bonuses per kill. Another baron 600 miles out needed undead exterminated. 500 gold. A third lord was hiring 100 mercenaries for a full year of frontier development at 100 gold per head. The money was intoxicating, but the fine print was written in blood. 500 miles into the wasteland meant traveling through territory crawling with orcs, monsters, goblins, and things that ate goblins. The undead job? Suicide without proper blood energy protection, because undead radiated death aura that literally rotted your flesh on contact. Every lucrative mission on that board was essentially a dare from the universe. Want gold? Come die for it. Some burly mercenary at a nearby table tried recruiting me for the wolf hunting gig. I politely declined and speed walked out. Teaming up with strangers had a 100% betrayal rate in my experience. Vondero taught me that lesson with a greatsword. I was done being the naive newcomer who gets invited to the party and ends up on the menu. My new business model was simple. Build my own squad, train them with MY techniques, run missions as a self-contained unit. No more trusting random adventurers or mercenary captains with suspiciously friendly smiles. Every person fighting beside me would be system-verified, loyal, and personally trained. Slower to start, but infinitely less likely to end with arrows in my back. Aaliyah and Eric had been busy little worker bees all day. When I got back to the inn at nightfall, they'd purchased everything on the list and bought a second pack horse and a simple wooden cart to haul it all. 2. Leather armor sets, healing salves, which apparently cost more than gold-plated toilet seats in this economy, and enough grain and provisions to feed our valley settlement for a while. 20+ gold coins evaporated in a single shopping spree, and Aaliyah looked physically pained reporting the expenses. Before meeting me, her entire family's net worth was 3 gold coins. Watching 20 vanish in an afternoon probably gave her heart palpitations. I laughed it off. What she didn't know was that my invisible savings account still held well over 100 gold, and I was generating income faster than a medieval printing press. The real investment wasn't the supplies. It was the people who'd use them. Every coin spent on armor and training would come back multiplied once my squad could handle real mercenary contracts. Next morning, we rolled out of Black Rock City on our janky wooden cart, pulled by 2 unenthusiastic mules, heading south toward our secret mountain fortress. Behind us, a city that had tried to arrest me, rob me, hang me, and then apologize to me, all within the span of a month. Ahead, a hidden valley full of ex-slaves learning which end of a spear hurts, a growing treasury of gold, and approximately 8 months to turn a ragtag collection of starving farmers into something resembling an army before the Empire stripped my family name forever. No pressure. One day from Eagle Beak Valley, camping in the woods, my system pinged at dawn like the world's worst alarm clock. Iron and Bandak had upgrade options available, 1 gold coin each to promote them from new recruit to actual military classes. Iron could become a Swadino militiaman, Bandak a Doro hunter, which meant they gained combat experience overnight, which meant something was attacking my valley. My stomach dropped. Those people I'd generously released with 3 days of food probably got recaptured by bandits who tortured the valley's location out of them. My kindness had literally come back to bite me. Was I going to start executing witnesses like a proper medieval warlord? No. Did I briefly consider it? Also no. Okay, maybe for half a second. But I'm fundamentally too soft for this world. And weirdly, that softness had earned me Iron and Bandak's genuine loyalty in the first place. The math balanced out. Probably. I spent 2 gold upgrading both of them instantly. Whatever magical power-up the system delivered, they'd need it right now. Then I did something I'd been avoiding. Revealed my inventory ability. Swept an entire cartload of grain and supplies into my invisible storage in front of Aaliyah and Eric's absolutely stunned faces. A whole wagon of wheat and rye just, poof, vanished into my palm like a magic trick performed by a very stressed teenager. Nobody finds out about this. Ever. Aaliyah nodded solemnly, clearly assuming I own some ultra-rare wizard-made storage artifact. In reality, the space was far more powerful than anything wizards in this world had ever created. The greatest wizard servant the Kalinsa family ever employed had a storage device holding 3 cubic meters. Mine swallowed a wagon of grain into 2 inventory slots sorted by grain type. But letting them believe the wizard explanation was simpler than explaining interdimensional video game mechanics to medieval people, so I kept my mouth shut. We ditched the cart, unhitched both mules, and rode hard. Me on one mule, Aaliyah and Eric sharing the other. First time I'd actually ridden a horse. The original hog only had theoretical training from his dad. Thankfully, pack mules have the temperament of elderly librarians, so staying mounted wasn't the challenge. Going fast on a creature whose top speed was reluctant trot, that was the challenge. Meanwhile, back at Eagle Beak Valley, my people were living through hell. Bandits had attacked before dawn, dozens of masked fighters pouring into the narrow canyon passage, throwing themselves at the fortress wall like angry ants at a picnic blanket. Iron spotted them during his watch shift and sounded the alarm just in time. He organized our 14 defenders into 3 groups. Himself with 5 spear wielders holding the wall top, Bandak with 2 archers providing cover fire, and Nick leading the rest to barricade the gate against battering rams. 14 malnourished ex-slaves with 2 weeks of basic training against a small army of desperate bandits. The math was horrifying. Iron killed 6 climbers with his spear before his arms turned to jelly. Bandak shot 6 more before running dry and switching to a spear he barely knew how to use. Then nearly got yanked off the wall when a bandit grabbed his weapon. 2 of our slaves took arrows and their screaming sent the others into panic, cowering behind anything solid, too terrified to fight. The gate was buckling. Bodies were piling up on both sides, but the bandits kept coming. Iron and Bandak locked eyes in that universal look of, well, this was nice while it lasted. 3 days of eating real food and dreaming about a future, all about to end on a blood-soaked wall in a canyon nobody knew existed. Then I upgraded them. From 20 miles away, my system pumped combat power directly into their bodies. Their exhaustion evaporated like morning fog. Strength doubled. Iron spears suddenly moved like it had a mind of its own. Years of phantom training flooding his muscles, turning basic thrusts into fluid-killing strokes. Bandits fell off ladders like overripe fruit, skewered before they could even scream. Bandak's transformation was even more dramatic. His hunter bloodline awakened, or whatever the system did, because suddenly his eyesight sharpened, his reflexes went supernatural, and his arrows started finding throats with mechanical precision. 5 steps, 50 steps, didn't matter, every shot landed. He wasn't quite at night level, hit a fly at 100 paces, accuracy, but at close range he was an absolute meat grinder. The bandits broke. They'd been winning against starving amateurs, and suddenly 2 of those amateurs transformed into mini-bosses mid-battle. 15+ dead bandits littered the wall and canyon floor, and the survivors scrambled backward into the darkness wondering what the hell just happened. What happened was a 14-year-old kid on a mule 20 miles away spent 2 gold coins and remotely turned the tide of a siege. My system wasn't just a personal cheat code. It was a command and control network that could upgrade soldiers in real time across distances. The strategic implications made my head spin. Every gold coin invested in troop upgrades wasn't just making one person stronger. It was potentially saving an entire defensive position at the exact moment it mattered most. Iron and Bandak probably thought their mysterious lord had divine powers, beaming strength through prayer or sheer willpower. I was perfectly happy letting that rumor develop. My boss is possibly a god, is excellent for unit morale. I kicked my mule harder. 20 miles to go, bandits to clean up, and a valley to secure. My secret mountain base had survived its first real test by the skin of everyone's teeth, and the only reason it still existed was because my cheat system had zero respect for the laws of distance and biology. Being a remote access warlord riding a geriatric mule through the forest at maximum waddle speed while my garrison fought for survival was not how I'd imagined commanding armies. But it was working, and in this world, working was all that mattered. We arrived at Eagle Beak Valley just in time to find 60-plus bandits trying to smoke my people out like bees from a hive. Their leader was a one-eyed giant with a scar crossing his empty eye socket like someone had tried to split his face in half and quit halfway. He rode a warhorse so massive it looked like someone had fed a regular horse nothing but steroids and anger for 10 years. Over 2 meters at the shoulder, muscles on its muscles. In his hand, a knight's lance. On his face, the expression of a man who'd already mentally redecorated my valley's living quarters. His plan was clever, I'll give him that. The canyon tunnel funneled wind inward, so piling wet wood at the entrance and lighting it would fill the entire passage with choking smoke. My defenders would either abandon the wall and get slaughtered in the open or suffocate behind it. Classic siege thinking from a guy with one eye and apparently 2 brain cells to rub together, one more than I'd expected from a bandit boss. On the way here, I discovered that living creatures fit in my inventory. I touched one of our pack mules, and it just vanished. Like a magic trick performed by someone who doesn't understand magic. Aaliyah and Eric watched their mule evaporate under my palm, and their jaws hit the forest floor so hard they probably left dents. Everyone knew wizard-made storage artifacts existed, but those could only hold dead objects. Absorbing a living, breathing animal was supposedly impossible. Their loyalty scores jumped immediately. Nothing inspires devotion quite like your boss casually deleting a horse from reality. I scoped the battlefield and found my sniper nest, a nearly vertical rock face across the river with a jutting stone ledge about 80 paces from the bandits. Perfect. Shooting platform. The river blocked infantry from reaching me. The cliff was too steep for humans, and that gorgeous warhorse couldn't climb a slope if its life depended on it. Geography was about to become my deadliest weapon. One problem, the one-eyed boss was tucked behind a rock outcropping on the road's inner curve, completely blocked from my angle. Annoying, but I had plenty of other targets to keep busy with. I started picking off the wood carriers like a carnival game operator from hell. 5 dead before they even figured out where the arrows were coming from. One eye screamed, right slope. Everybody down, and every bandit kissed dirt. Smart reaction time for a cyclops, but it also meant nobody was feeding the smoke fires anymore. The flames at the tunnel mouth choked and died. Inside, Iron and his crew had been holding position with wet rags over their faces, tears streaming, lungs burning. And suddenly the smoke just stopped. They knew I was back. One eye sent 6 archers to suppress me. At 80 paces, 5 of them couldn't even reach my position. Their arrows floated up like tired butterflies and dropped pathetically at my feet. Free ammunition delivery, essentially. One guy had enough pull to actually land shots near me, so I killed him first, then picked off 3 more. The remaining 2 decided that lying face down in the dirt was a superior career choice to standing up and dying. Then came the shield wall push. Bandits with tower shields leading, swordsmen behind, climbing my slope step by step. At 10 paces, arrows became useless against shields angled upward. They were close enough that I could hear them breathing, smell their unwashed confidence. Right then, my system offered upgrades for Aaliyah and Eric. 1 gold each. I mentally smashed the yes button so hard I'm surprised the system didn't file a complaint. Aaliyah's body flooded with power, strength doubled, years of archery and sword training downloaded into her muscles instantly. She went from knows which end of the bow to hold to competent hunter-class fighter in the time it takes to blink. Eric got the same treatment, his spear work crystallizing from clumsy basics into fluid, confident technique. I tossed Aaliyah my old longbow and gave Eric the iron spear. My composite bow was too strong for her, but the regular longbow matched her new abilities perfectly. Eric's new class specialized in infantry combat, and from our elevated position, a long spear pointing downhill was basically a death sentence for anyone climbing toward us. I told Aaliyah to fall back and provide arrow support, stashed my bow behind the rock, pulled out my broadsword and arm shield, and waited until the shield wall crept within striking distance. Then I launched myself off that rock ledge like a hungry tiger with a mortgage payment due. Whirlwind Slash doesn't care about your shield formation. My blade carved through the gap between two shields before the carriers registered that the scary archer had transformed into a scary swordsman falling on them from above. The front line crumbled. Behind me, Eric thrust his spear downhill into anyone trying to flank, and Aaliyah's arrows started finding necks with surprising accuracy for someone who'd been a camp follower, classification 20 seconds ago. From the tunnel side, Iron, freshly upgraded, spear moving like liquid murder, led a counterattack through the now smokeless passage. Bandak's arrows resumed their mechanical, throat-seeking routine. The bandits found themselves squeezed between a hillside death squad and a tunnel full of suddenly competent former slaves who fought like they'd been training for years instead of days. The one-eyed boss on his magnificent warhorse watched his 60-man assault force get systematically dismantled by a 14-year-old, 2 teenagers, and a handful of ex-slaves who'd apparently leveled up mid-battle like characters in a game nobody else could see. Which was, of course, exactly what happened. But he didn't need to know that. I threw myself into that bandit mob like a blender someone forgot to put the lid on. Sword spinning, shield whirling, blood spraying in directions I didn't know blood could spray. Whirlwind Slash plus Spin Guard turned me into a medieval food processor. Every bandit who got close donated a neck wound to the cause and fell over screaming. Was it glamorous? Absolutely not. These guys weren't just standing there politely waiting to die. Spears, swords, clubs, farming implements, everything hit me. My armor caught the worst of it, but my legs looked like I'd lost a fight with an angry rosebush made of knives. Blood ran down into my boots and made squishing sounds when I moved. Very heroic. Very disgusting. But they had it worse. 12 dead in under a minute, courtesy of yours truly. Eric went berserk beside me, his spear dancing like he'd been born holding it instead of receiving the skill download approximately 90 seconds ago. Behind us, Aaliyah had pressed herself against the cliff face like a deadly wallflower, calmly putting arrows through throats with the relaxed precision of someone sorting mail. 5 kills. The girl who'd been classified as camp follower this morning was now the most terrifying postal worker in medieval history. Then the tunnel erupted. Iron, Bandak, and Nick led our garrison in a screaming charge from behind the fortress wall, sandwiching the bandits between 2 killing zones. Iron's spear led the way like a guided missile with anger issues. Bandak scrambled up the opposite hillside and started raining arrows from a new angle, because apparently one sniper nest wasn't enough for this valley. Surrender or die, I bellowed, mostly because my arms were getting tired and killing people is exhausting cardio. The bandits broke like cheap pottery. They'd been barely holding together out of fear of their one-eyed boss, and once our reinforcements showed up, that fear evaporated faster than my sympathy. Weapons clattered to the ground. Grown men dove face first into the dirt with their hands over their heads. One Eye himself wheeled his gorgeous warhorse around and bolted for the canyon exit. Smart survival instinct. Terrible strategic decision, because he was running away on the one thing in this valley I wanted more than his death. That horse. 2 meters at the shoulder. Muscles like sculpted marble. Worth at least 20 gold coins, probably more. If he thought I was letting that animal gallop out of my life, he'd clearly never met someone who grew up broke in 2 separate lifetimes. I grabbed my composite bow and sprinted along the hillside, hunting for a shooting angle while he hunched low over the saddle like a man who'd been shot at before. His leather armor covered every vital spot. His head was buried against the horse's neck. The man knew exactly how to make himself a terrible target while fleeing at full gallop. First arrow caught him in the thigh. He screamed but stayed mounted, which was genuinely impressive and deeply annoying. The horse accelerated toward the tree line. 5 more seconds, and he'd disappear into the forest forever. Then I spotted it. A tiny gap where his back armor's leather straps didn't quite overlap. Maybe 2 inches of exposed flesh, visible only from my elevated angle. He was 100 paces away, moving at full speed, bouncing on a galloping horse, and I had exactly 1 shot before the forest swallowed him. My entire body went still. The world narrowed to that 2-inch gap and the arrow between my fingers. Everything I'd trained, the breathing technique steadying my heartbeat, the archery mastery guiding my aim, the enhanced vision from my upgrades tracking the target, all of it, compressed into a single frozen moment. I released. The 3-bladed iron arrowhead, system gifted, sharp enough to split hair, punched through that gap and buried itself in his spine. He screamed, arms went limp, and he tumbled off the horse like a sack of particularly ugly potatoes. The warhorse circled its fallen master, confused and loyal. Adorable. Also mine now. The master is mighty. Iron's cheer echoed through the canyon, and suddenly every one of my fighters was screaming praise like I'd just scored the winning goal in the world's most violent soccer match. The remaining 32 bandits surrendered instantly. Weapons thrown, faces planted in mud, dignity abandoned. Nick led the "surrender or die" chant with the enthusiasm of a man who'd just been upgraded to deck warrior class approximately 3 minutes earlier and was eager to test whether his new axe skills worked on living targets. The bandits wisely chose not to find out. Speaking of Nick, I'd spent 1 gold to upgrade him during the mop-up, and watching his body transform in real time never got old. Muscles inflating, reflexes sharpening, years of axe training materializing in his brain like someone had plugged a USB drive directly into his skull. His loyalty score jumped 5 points. Apparently, being magically juiced by your mysterious teenage lord really builds workplace loyalty. My own stats had gotten a nice bump too. Archery proficiency rocketed to 132, single-handed weapons to 125. That impossible shot on the fleeing bandit boss had apparently been worth a massive experience bonus. The system rewarded difficulty, not just quantity. Good to know. Next time I needed proficiency points, I tried juggling swords while blindfolded on a tightrope. Should be worth at least 50 points. Elia practically dragged me into the stone tower afterward, stripped off my armor, which looked like it had been through a garbage disposal, cleaned my wounds with boiled water, slathered everything in healing salve, and wrapped me up like a medieval mummy. I had cuts in places I didn't know I had places, but nothing life-threatening. The copper half armor had earned its keep today, stopping at least a dozen strikes that would have opened me up like a letter. Outside, my team operated like a machine. Iron organized weapon collection, armor stripping, and corpse disposal with the efficiency of someone who'd been waiting his entire enslaved life for a chance to be in charge. Bodies burned in the riverbed. Salvageable gear piled up outside the tower. 32 prisoners herded into the same stone rooms where they'd once kept MY people captive. Poetic justice served with a side of irony. The captured loot was mostly garbage, cheap swords, wooden spears, plywood shields, and farming tools repurposed as weapons. These bandits had been desperate refugees with sharp sticks, not professional soldiers. Almost felt bad. Then I remembered they'd tried to smoke out and slaughter my people at dawn, and the sympathy evaporated. I sentenced them to 2 days without food, then light rations and farm labor. Harsh, but this world didn't run on participation trophies. They'd attacked my home, lost, and now they'd grow my wheat. The same fields their predecessors had forced MY slaves to work. The wheel of exploitation just kept spinning, and today it had spun in my direction. Freshly bandaged, sitting on the tower steps watching Eric lead my new warhorse into the courtyard. That magnificent beast towering over our sad little mules like a lion among hamsters. I did some mental accounting. Secret Valley Fortress, defended. Army, growing. Warhorse, acquired. Gold reserves, healthy. Wounds, manageable. Enemy body count for the day, lost track, honestly. Not bad for a dead cancer patient who woke up in a cave 3 weeks ago. I lined up everyone in front of the tower and gave my first ever motivational speech to an audience of battered ex-slaves, and honestly, I crushed it. 2 lifetimes of watching movies and reading management books finally paid off. You fought with loyalty, courage, and honor today. I'm Hog Kalinsa, heir to the Wind Dragon family. Follow me, and one day you'll have your own land and titles. Their eyes lit up like I'd promised them the moon on a silver plate. Which, technically, I sort of had. But the loyalty scores jumping 10 points each told me they believed it. And in this world, belief was currency. Iron, Bandak, and Nick dropped to one knee and called me Lord for the first time, and something shifted in the air, like we'd crossed an invisible line from random teenagers and slaves hiding in a cave to actual fledgling military organization. I organized my little army into 2 squads. Infantry under Iron with Nick and Eric as deputies, archers under Bandak. Everyone else, the remaining 12 plus eventually some reformed prisoners, would undergo 3 months of basic combat training. Pass the evaluation, join a squad, get promoted from farm slave to soldier with full meals and combat technique training. Fail, and keep farming. Simple incentive structure that made every single person in that courtyard suddenly very interested in learning which end of a spear goes forward. Even the 32 captured bandits were potential recruits. Starve them for 2 days first. Nothing personal, just standard. Remember who's in charge, protocol, then put them to work in the fields. The cooperative ones with potential could eventually try out for the squads. The world ran on recycling people, and I was becoming disturbingly efficient at it. Aaliyah took over logistics like she'd been born with a spreadsheet embedded in her DNA. Within hours, she'd inventoried every captured weapon, estimated values, cataloged grain supplies, and organized the underground storeroom with military precision. I made her head of household and nearguard captain, which sounded impressive until you realized her household was a bandit cave and her nearguard was herself. But titles matter in this world, and she wore hers with pride that was genuinely touching. I assigned Nick to interrogate the prisoners. The kid had a sharp mind behind those axe-swinging muscles, and told Eric to take care of the warhorse. When Eric tried to insist on doing all the stable work himself, I sat him down for his first leadership lesson. You're going to command hundreds of men someday. Learn to delegate. Train 2 slaves as stable hands and focus on becoming a commander, not a really good horsebrusher. His expression shifted from confused teenager to something more focused, more serious. Like a switch flipped inside his head. Good. I needed officers, not employees. Dinner was the best meal Eagle Beak Valley had ever produced. White bread, beef stew, vegetables, mushroom soup. Aaliyah refused to sit with me because apparently servants don't eat with lords in this world. I could have pushed the point, but rewriting centuries of cultural programming over beef stew seemed ambitious, so I let it go. She did, however, insist on giving me a full sponge bath afterward, which was simultaneously the most awkward and most luxurious experience of both my lifetimes. A beautiful 16-year-old girl meticulously cleaning every inch of a 14-year-old lord's body while blushing furiously. This was either peak medieval nobility or peak medieval awkwardness. My face was so red it probably matched my wounds. But I'm not complaining. After weeks of smelling like wolf blood, cave fungus, and dead bandit, being clean felt like ascending to a higher plane of existence. 2 days later, my wounds had scabbed over thanks to that miraculous black healing paste. The stuff looked like tar and smelled like a swamp's armpit, but it worked faster than anything from my old world. I was already itching to train again. Nick delivered his interrogation report with the eagerness of a golden retriever presenting a tennis ball. The bandit group originally numbered 98 total. 85 had attacked us, meaning 14 plus a second boss, a skilled archer, were still sitting in their home base 80 miles away, completely unaware that their invasion force had been converted into my farm laborers. Their camp held 30 more slaves, a tiny patch of farmland, and here's where my ears perked up. A blacksmith shop capable of forging basic weapons. A blacksmith. In an era where good steel meant the difference between knight and corpse, having my own weapon forge was like finding a printer that printed money. Rusty, medieval money, but money nonetheless. The bandits had attacked us out of desperation, not ambition. A nearby lord named Toot had put a bounty on them after they'd raided his villages one too many times, and mercenaries were closing in. They needed a new hideout. Heard about our cozy valley from the 2 prisoners I'd released. Thanks again. Passed me for being too nice, and decided to take it by force. Their entire strategic plan was essentially run away from the guy hunting us by attacking a different guy who turned out to be worse. 80 miles away, 14 bandits and a decent archer guarded a camp full of slaves, supplies, and smithing equipment that didn't know their leadership had been permanently downsized. A sitting duck operation just waiting for someone with a small army and zero ethical hesitation to walk in and claim it. I happened to be exactly that someone. My mind was already drafting the operation. Fast march, hit them before news traveled, absorb their people and resources, strip the blacksmith equipment, and relocate everything useful back to Eagle Beak Valley. Double my workforce, acquire metalworking capability, and eliminate a potential future threat, all in one clean sweep. The management books from my past life called this vertical integration. I called it Tuesday. 3 weeks ago, I was an orphan dying of cancer in front of a computer screen. Now I was a lord with a hidden fortress, a growing army, a warhorse, a dragon-breathing technique, and expansion plans that would make a venture capitalist weep with recognition. The climb from rock bottom was only getting started, and I was picking up speed. A blacksmith. Those two words hit my brain like a shot of espresso. An entire weapons forge sitting in some bandit camp 80 miles away, guarded by 14 idiots who didn't know their boss was currently fertilizing my riverbed. I needed that forge the way a drowning man needs air. I called a war council, which sounds impressive until you remember my council was 3 upgraded ex-slaves, 2 teenage vassals, and me, a 14-year-old pretending to know what leadership looked like based entirely on movies and business books from a life where I died playing video games. The plan was straightforward. Recruit some of our captured bandits as guides and door openers, leave a skeleton crew guarding home base, and fast march to the enemy camp before word spread that their invasion force had been converted into my agricultural workforce. Nick worked his magic on the prisoners. Offered them a simple deal. Help us, eat today, potentially earn your freedom. Fight us, starve in a stone cell indefinitely. 10 volunteers materialized faster than you can say. Empty stomach. Elia fed them soup and bread, armed them with basic weapons from our stash, and we rolled out within the hour. My entire strike force, 5 system-bound soldiers, 10 recently starving turncoats, and whatever overinflated confidence I'd accumulated from surviving 3 weeks in this murder world. 2 days of hiking through Greenwood Hills taught me why bandits loved this place and lords ignored it. Worthless rocky terrain, impenetrable forests, cliffs everywhere, soil so poor you couldn't grow a grudge in it, let alone crops. It sat between 2 provinces like an unwanted middle child nobody wanted to claim. Paradise for outlaws, nightmare for tax collectors. The bandit stronghold was perched atop Mount Calculo, the most dramatic piece of real estate I'd seen since arriving in this world. 1 narrow winding path up, sheer cliffs on every side, 5 checkpoint gates built into the mountainside, and a fortress at the summit that looked like someone had designed it specifically to make attackers cry. The only weakness? Almost no farmland and no water source except collected rainwater. Block the exit, and everyone inside slowly dies of thirst. Impressive fortress, terrible long-term planning. Compared to my Eagle Beak Valley with its 100 acres of wheat fields, river, and hidden tunnel entrance, this place was a glorified eagle's nest with delusions of grandeur. No wonder I had wanted my valley so badly. I waited until dusk, optimal deception lighting, and sent the 10 turncoats ahead disguised as exhausted survivors stumbling home from a failed raid. Which, technically, they were. The best lies are just truths wearing different hats. Their leader, a guy named Benikook, turned out to be a surprisingly talented actor. He approached the first gate weeping like he'd just survived the apocalypse. "Brother, it's me, Benikook. We got ambushed. The boss is dead. We barely escaped." His crew backed him up with overlapping panicked shouting that sounded authentically chaotic. Oscar-worthy ensemble performance from a group of men whose primary motivation was, "Please let us continue eating food." The gate guard, a guy nicknamed Sickle, squinted down, recognized a few faces, and cracked open the door. The second our people flooded through, I materialized from the shadows like the world's most violent party crasher and knocked both sentries unconscious before they could process that the survivors had brought company. Bound, gagged, stashed. Gate 1 down, 0 alarms raised. Gates 2 through 5 fell like dominoes. Same routine each time. Benikook's tragic survivor act, a moment of recognition, an open door, and then me introducing the guards to involuntary nap time. By the fifth gate, I developed an efficient system. Benekuk cries, door opens, I sprint, someone gets knocked out, Iron ties them up, we move on. Assembly line infiltration. Then we reached the summit fortress and my confidence briefly stuttered. The main gate sat atop a 300-step slope angled at 60 degrees, flanked by walls built directly into cliff faces rising 20 to 30 meters. Every other approach was sheer vertical rock that would challenge a spider. If they closed that gate and raised the alarm, we'd be stuck on a mountainside getting pelted with arrows like the world's most exposed bowling pins. Everything depended on Benekuk's performance at this final door. One suspicious guard, one wrong word, one nervous glance backward at the six-armed strangers hiding in the shadows behind the turncoats, and this whole operation would transform from clever infiltration to suicide on a staircase. I gripped my sword, steadied my breathing, and watched Benekuk approach the final gate with tears streaming down his face and a voice cracking with perfectly calibrated desperation. For a former bandit whose biggest skill 2 days ago was being captured without dying, the man had found his true calling. If this world had theater, he'd have been a star. Instead, he was my skeleton key to a mountaintop fortress, and every second of his performance was worth more than the meal I'd bribed him with. The gate creaked open. Benekuk marched up that 60-degree death, ramp calling out to his old buddies like a homesick puppy, and I have to say, if this man ever gets tired of being a soldier, he has a brilliant career in theater waiting for him. Tears, voice cracks, the whole performance. Meanwhile, I'm wedged in the middle of our group, trying to look like just another exhausted bandit and not like, the guy who murdered everyone's boss 2 days ago. The second boss was no fool, though. Silver-haired, face mostly hidden behind a thick leather wind hood that could probably stop an arrow, and he was holding a loaded bow behind the wall where we couldn't see it. He made everyone approach one at a time, 10 steps apart, checking faces by torchlight like the world's most paranoid nightclub bouncer. Next, 8 verified faces, guards slowly relaxing. Then it was my turn. I didn't give him time to squint. The second I had a clear angle on the only exposed part of his face, his eyes, barely visible through that ridiculous hood, I put an arrow through one of them from 40 paces uphill. In the dark, on a slope, while he was half hidden behind a stone wall. Even I was impressed with that shot, and I'm the one who took it. The fortress erupted into panic, but panic among 4 remaining bandits and a bunch of traumatized slaves mostly looked like confused shouting and zero organized resistance. Problem was, the gate was still closed, and we were still standing on a slope steep enough to ski down. No ladders, no battering ram, no way in except through a door that nobody inside was enthusiastic about opening. So I deployed my secret weapon, Benekuk's mouth. I told him to negotiate, and this man delivered a 1-hour monologue that could have sold ice to penguins. He wept about their dead leaders, painted a glorious picture of serving a real noble lord, warned them about the alternative, starving behind locked doors until their bones turned to dust, and somehow made surrendering sound like winning the lottery. The man was so persuasive, I almost pledged loyalty to myself again just listening to him. The gate creaked open. We poured in. No blood, no fighting. Just a smooth, hostile takeover of a mountaintop fortress accomplished primarily through one man's extraordinary gift for emotional manipulation and my willingness to shoot people in the eyeball. I rewarded Benekuk publicly, made a whole show of accepting his oath with a sword tap on the shoulder in front of everyone. Marketing, basically. Look what happens when you cooperate with the new management. Instant promotion from prisoner to sworn follower. The other 9 volunteers dropped to their knees so fast they probably bruised their kneecaps, all begging to join up. My system filtered them ruthlessly, though. Out of 9 eager pledges, only 3 met the minimum loyalty threshold of 60. The rest wanted the benefits, but hadn't genuinely committed in their hearts. Fascinating. The system could literally detect sincerity, like a medieval lie detector that ran on magic instead of electricity. I accepted everyone's verbal oaths for appearances, but quietly earmarked only the genuine ones for future squad positions. The fakers could prove themselves over the next 3 months or stay on farming duty forever. Benekuk himself scored 75 loyalty and got classified as a Swadino recruit. Solid pickup. The man had earned his spot through sheer theatrical excellence and the good sense to pick the winning side early. The mountain fortress was bigger than expected, about a kilometer across at the summit, though most of it was useless rocky terrain with a few scraggly fields carved between boulders. Stone houses scattered haphazardly around a central platform where two stone buildings served as the leadership's quarters. Slaves huddled everywhere with the blank, hopeless expressions of people who'd accepted that they were furniture with heartbeats. Didn't matter who owned them. Life was the same either way. That mindset could be changed, though. I'd already proven it with Iron, Bandak, and Nick. Give someone purpose, training, and the faintest glimmer of upward mobility, and that dead-eyed slave transforms into a fierce warrior who'll charge into battle screaming your name. The secret ingredient wasn't fear, it was hope. But I wasn't here for philosophy. I was here for the blacksmith. Found the forge near the central platform, a proper setup with 3 different-sized hammers, a furnace, bellows, multiple types of tongs, the works. Kneeling outside was a muscular 20-something slave named Hogarth, looking about as emotionally invested in my arrival as a rock watching rain. His story was depressingly common. Grandfather was a slave blacksmith. Father was a slave blacksmith. He was born a slave blacksmith. 3 generations of skilled craftsmen treated as transferable property. His most recent owner had sold him to a trading company. Bandits hijacked the caravan, and he'd rebuilt his entire workshop from scratch in a mountaintop bandit lair using tools he'd carried with him. The man's whole life was get sold, get kidnapped, build a forge, repeat. Want to join me and keep smithing? Sure. Zero emotion. Like I'd asked if he wanted toast. But my system told the real story. Loyalty 60, minimum threshold, genuinely willing to pledge. Hogarth didn't care who he worked for because nobody had ever given him a reason to care. He'd been a tool his entire life, passed between owners like a hammer passed between hands. Loyalty 60 wasn't enthusiasm. It was the baseline willingness of a man who'd learned that resistance was pointless and cooperation meant survival. I was going to change that. Give this man proper food, decent treatment, and the knowledge that his craft actually mattered to someone building something real, and watch that loyalty score climb. A skilled blacksmith who genuinely wanted to make weapons for your army was worth more than a dozen reluctant swordswingers. Standing in that torchlit forge, surrounded by hammers and anvils and the faint smell of old iron, I felt something click into place. I had soldiers, I had farmland, I had a hidden fortress, and now I had the ability to manufacture my own weapons. Every piece of my future kingdom was assembling itself like a puzzle being solved by a very determined, very tired, very lucky teenager who refused to die in either of his lives. Hogarth the blacksmith joined my party with the emotional intensity of a man ordering lunch. Loyalty 60, barely squeaking past the threshold, but I didn't care if he loved me or tolerated me, because a blacksmith with his own upgrade tree was worth more than a dozen enthusiastic idiots with swords. I told Aaliyah to feed him like royalty. This man's hands would forge the weapons that built my kingdom, and hungry hands make crooked swords. Benakuk led me to the bandit boss's private quarters, which turned out to be surprisingly fancy for a mountaintop criminal. Velvet carpets, cotton bedding, the works. This one-eyed maniac had been living like a budget king while his men ate 1 black bread roll a day. Then Benakuk casually moved a shelf, popped a fake stone out of the wall like he was opening a cereal box, and revealed a hidden compartment containing a wooden chest. Inside, a layer of gold coins and a combat manual for spiral lance, a mounted polearm technique. My heart did a backflip. I'd been needing a cavalry combat art for my mid-level knight certification, and the universe had just gift-wrapped one inside a bandit's secret wall safe. The gold was disappointing, though, only 30 coins. Nearly 100 bandits under his command, and this guy had saved less money than I'd earned from selling wolves in my first week. Criminal enterprise clearly wasn't as profitable as the recruitment brochure suggested. I vacuumed everything useful into my inventory: grain, iron ingots, velvet carpets, the combat manual, even the fancy bedding. Benakuk watched physical matter disappear into my palm, and his loyalty score ticked up 2 more points. Nothing builds faith quite like watching your new boss casually violate the laws of physics. Fed the slaves a proper dinner, black bread until they burst, plus meat soup. The gratitude was overwhelming and heartbreaking simultaneously. These people had literally never eaten until full before. Their entire existence had been measured in bread crusts and beatings, and here I was being praised like a saint for providing the bare minimum of human decency. This world's bar for kindness was buried so deep underground you'd need a shovel to find it. Next morning, I gave everyone the standard speech: leave with food or stay and serve. 25 chose to stay, including every single branded slave. The ones with slave tattooed into their neck arteries had nowhere else to go and knew it. Some freeborn captives left, and I let them walk with provisions and zero hard feelings. My conscience had limits, even if this world didn't. We stripped the mountain fortress bare like professional movers with a grudge. Everything portable went into my inventory or onto people's backs. Then we marched for Eagle Beak Valley, a caravan of ex-slaves, reformed bandits, one emotionless blacksmith carrying his beloved tools, and me, a teenager with a secret dimensional pocket stuffed with enough supplies to open a medieval Costco. Halfway home, Bandak materialized from the forest shadows, looking tense. Ambush ahead. 12 people hiding in the bushes, 120 paces. I crept forward and spotted them, well hidden in the undergrowth, practically invisible. Without Bandak's hunter senses, we'd have walked straight into their kill zone. I knocked an arrow, calculated the wind, and planted a shot 1 inch from the leader's neck into a tree trunk. Close enough to shave him. Far enough to say, I chose not to kill you. Choose wisely. 12 people slowly stood up from the bushes with the careful movements of people who'd just realized they were not the apex predators in this encounter. Hey friend, you don't look like bandits, their leader called out with a smile so forced it could have powered a windmill. Big guy, great armor, chainmail, iron helmet, massive battle axe. His squad was well equipped too, the lowest geared member wearing multi-layer leather that my best soldiers would have killed for. Hog, junior mercenary, I said, flashing my copper badge from a safe distance. Wild Bull Mercenary Squad, Captain Barutko. We're here to kill the one-eyed bandit chief. You on the same job? I almost laughed out loud. These mercenaries had been lurking in ambush position ready to massacre what they assumed was a column of poorly armed bandits, collect the bounty, and call it a day's work. My warning shot had instantly reclassified the situation from easy payday to potential suicide mission against someone who can thread needles with arrows at 120 paces. If I hadn't shot first, they'd have attacked my people, a ragtag column of slaves and converts who looked exactly like the bandit rabble they'd been hired to exterminate. Then they'd have hauled the bodies to the nearest lord, collected their reward, and nobody would have known the difference. That's the mercenary business model. Kill first, verify never. But now Barutko was all smiles and brotherhood because my archery had communicated a very clear message. I can kill you before you finish drawing that axe, so let's be friends instead. The universal language of violence-based diplomacy. I didn't mention that their target was already dead, his fortress emptied, his people absorbed into my growing labor force, and his secret combat manual was sitting in my invisible pocket next to a velvet carpet and 40 pounds of iron ingots. Let them hike up that mountain, find an empty fortress, and waste a week figuring out what happened. By then I'd be back in my hidden valley training soldiers and forging weapons. Some information is worth sharing. Some is worth its weight in gold precisely because you keep it to yourself. And the look on 12 heavily armed mercenaries' faces when a skinny teenager with a bow made them all stand up and play nice? Absolutely priceless. Barutko and his wild bull mercenaries sized up my ragtag column of ex-slaves and reformed bandits, did some quick mental math involving my arrow still vibrating in a tree trunk 1 inch from his scout's jugular, and decided that friendship was significantly healthier than fighting. I didn't take the bounty job, I told him coolly. These bandits just annoyed me, so I deleted their entire operation. Personal matter. His eyebrows climbed so high they nearly left his face. Meanwhile, my people had silently arranged themselves into combat formation without me saying a word. Iron, Erek, and Nick forming a shield wall in front of me, Bandak vanishing into the trees to find a sniper perch, Aaliyah ghosting sideways into the forest with her bow. Even the 10 armed converts gripped their weapons and stood ready. We looked like a team that had rehearsed this, not a bunch of strangers who'd been enemies 48 hours ago. Barutko noticed all of this and promptly swallowed whatever ambush fantasies he'd been entertaining. Business proposition, he said, switching to his best friendly uncle voice. We split the bounty. You did the work, we do the paperwork. 50-50? I almost admired the audacity. These 12 guys had contributed exactly nothing. Zero risk, zero fighting, zero dead friends, and wanted half of 200 gold for the privilege of walking to a lord's office and saying, we did it. The Mercenary Guild's honor system had more holes than my socks. I negotiated him up to 120 gold for me, 80 for them. Threw in some theatrical grief about my 6 fallen comrades, and their expensive funeral costs. Pure fiction. I hadn't lost a single person in the fortress assault, but Barutko didn't need to know that. He also tried to buy my slaves for resale, which I shut down instantly. These people were my future workforce, not merchandise. The moment I mentioned my family needs them, Barutko's demeanor shifted from fellow mercenary to respectful subordinate. In this world, hinting at noble blood was like flashing a VIP badge. Suddenly everyone's posture improved, and the haggling got much more polite. We agreed to meet at Cumeral Town Tavern in 3 days for the gold handoff, verified each other's mercenary badges, and parted ways. He'd go verify the empty fortress, file the bounty claim, and bring my cut. I'd go home and pretend I hadn't just scammed 120 gold coins out of thin air for work I'd already been paid for through looting. 120 free gold coins. For doing absolutely nothing extra. Combined with everything else, my treasury was becoming genuinely impressive, and all it had cost me was a convincing poker face and one very precisely placed warning shot. Back at Eagle Beak Valley, I finally let myself breathe. The hidden valley with its wheat fields, stone buildings, defensive wall, and growing population was starting to feel like home. An illegal, undocumented, technically just a squatted bandit lair kind of home, but home nonetheless. Everything was trending upward. More people, more resources, more military capability, more gold. Time to professionalize. I locked myself in the stone tower for 2 days writing a training manual I called the Military Training Doctrine. 2 lifetimes of knowledge crammed into one sheepskin document. Modern military discipline concepts disguised as medieval common sense. The 3 pillars. Drill formation training borrowed straight from my old world's armies. Because nothing teaches instant obedience like standing perfectly still for 2 hours while someone yells at you. Basic combat instruction across 4 weapon categories, so every recruit found their natural specialty. And a tactical communication system using flag signals, hand gestures, and battle formations that was centuries ahead of what anyone in this world used. Most lords here commanded armies with the sophistication of everyone charge that direction and try not to die. My soldiers would operate like a coordinated machine, advancing, retreating, flanking, and regrouping on silent hand signals while the enemy was still screaming confused orders across a noisy battlefield. Even with a tiny force, superior coordination could multiply effective combat power several times over. Called a meeting with my command staff, which sounded grand until you remembered it was 5 people sitting in a bandit's old living room. 4 of them could read, which was actually impressive for this world where literacy was a luxury most peasants never touched. Iron and Nick couldn't, so I assigned Aaliyah to teach them. A squad leader who can't read orders is a squad leader waiting to get everyone killed. I made one thing crystal clear. Follow the manual exactly. No freelancing. No, I think this works better. No creative interpretation. They could suggest improvements, and I'd consider revisions. But until I approved changes, the doctrine was law. These were people who'd been slaves and bandits a week ago. Discipline had to be absolute before flexibility could be earned. Then came recruitment day. I opened tryouts to every willing body in the valley. Slaves, captured bandits, reformed criminals, anyone who wanted to trade farming for fighting. 60 recruits made the cut. Most were young, because the bandits' lifestyle had a brutally simple age filter. Anyone old or weak was already dead. I assigned my upgraded soldiers as instructors. Iron teaching spear, Bandak teaching archery, Nick teaching axe, Eric teaching sword. Each one had been system-enhanced with years of compressed combat experience, making them better teachers than people who'd actually spent those years training. The blind leading the blind, except the blind had received magical laser eye surgery and were now the sharpest-eyed people in the room. Watching 60 former slaves doing drill formations in a hidden mountain valley, learning flag signals and combat stances from instructors who'd been property themselves 2 weeks ago. It was simultaneously the most ridiculous and most promising thing I'd ever witnessed. None of them were soldiers yet. Half of them held spears like broomsticks. A quarter flinched every time someone raised their voice, because raised voices had only ever meant beatings in their previous lives. But they were mine. Every single one of them. Eating full meals for the first time in their miserable lives. Learning skills that could transform them from victims into warriors. Training under a system that rewarded merit instead of birth. In 3 months, the best of them would join my official squads, receive system upgrades, and become the nucleus of an army that would carve a territory out of the wilderness. The Wind Dragon family had once commanded 1,000 armored knights. I was starting with 60 barefoot ex-slaves doing jumping jacks in a wheat field. Everyone's dynasty starts somewhere. I turned Eagle Beak Valley into a medieval boot camp, and then spent 2 months becoming a walking weapons encyclopedia because apparently having 5 combat techniques wasn't enough for a 14-year-old with abandonment issues and a magic cheat system. The plan was simple: learn every combat art I owned, grind weapon proficiency until the system force-fed me mastery, and eat enough meat to fuel a dragon breathing technique that consumed calories like a furnace consuming newspapers. Every technique I mastered reshaped my body, strengthening specific muscles, reinforcing bones, thickening blood energy, which meant every new skill wasn't just adding a weapon to my arsenal, it was literally upgrading my hardware. Like installing new software that also overclocks the processor. Spear first. 1 month of daily training. Half on foot, half on horseback atop my newly acquired warhorse, who was significantly more cooperative than anyone I'd ever worked with in either lifetime. When proficiency hit 101, basic spear mastery downloaded into my brain like a year of compressed training memories. 2 days later at 110, thrust technique unlocked. 2 more phantom years of practice. My body restructured itself again. Arms longer, core stronger, grip like iron pliers. Blood energy surged enough to restart serious dragon breathing sessions, which I'd been rationing because my body couldn't keep up with the consumption. Now, between combat mastery upgrades and eating approximately my body weight in meat daily, my internal energy factory was finally running at full capacity. Also invented the concept of a saddle. Well, invented is generous. I vaguely remembered what saddles looked like from my old life, and drew something a kindergartner would have been embarrassed by. Handed the sketch to Wibart the blacksmith, who stared at it like I'd handed him abstract art, and politely informed me that saddles required woodworking, not metalwork. The revolutionary cavalry equipment upgrade would have to wait. Collected my 120 free gold coins from Barutko's mercenary squad at the Cumeral Town Tavern. Easiest money I'd ever made. Compensation for work I'd already profited from through looting. The man handed over gold with a smile that said, "I know you're robbing me, but your arrows scare me more than poverty does. Beautiful transaction." 10 more days. Spiral Lance mastered at proficiency 120. 3 phantom years of training crashed into my skull. This one was the real prize. A mounted combat technique that channeled a charging horse's momentum into a spinning spear strike with devastating armor-piercing power. My riding skill jumped again as a bonus, since the technique demanded near-perfect horsemanship. Still no riding mastery notification on my system panel though, which meant that particular breakthrough needed even more proficiency. Something to grind later. My strength now exceeded 600 pounds, past the mid-level apprentice knight threshold. I could have walked into the Knights Guild and upgraded my certification right there, except for the minor detail that I was hiding in a secret valley training an illegal army of ex-slaves and didn't particularly want to advertise my location. Then I tackled heavy strike using a 2-handed greatsword, the technique I'd inherited from Gerhard's dying family. 2 months of swinging a blade that weighed as much as a small child, and dual-handed sword mastery popped at proficiency 100, followed by heavy strike at 110. The physical improvements were noticeably smaller this time. My body was getting strong enough that beginner-tier technique upgrades barely moved the needle anymore. Like trying to get stronger by lifting weights that feel like pillows, you need heavier challenges for meaningful gains. 700 pounds of lifting strength now. High-level apprentice knights maxed out around 1,000, at which point blood energy became dense enough to attempt crystallizing a life seed, the gateway to becoming a true knight. Still a gap to close, but I was climbing that ladder faster than anyone in recorded history, and the top was finally visible. Between training sessions I collected my mercenary bounty, practiced dragon breathing until my veins felt like molten rivers, and watched my little army transform from frightened farm slaves into something approaching actual soldiers. 2 months of drill formations, weapon training, flag signals, and tactical exercises had worked miracles. They stood straighter, moved together, responded to commands without hesitation, and had developed that particular look in their eyes that said, I might actually survive this. Bandak, my hunter-class archer, spent weeks evaluating every recruit for ranged combat potential before presenting exactly 2 candidates. Archery demanded natural gifts: long arms, sharp eyes, steady hands, spatial awareness that couldn't be taught. Out of 60 trainees, only Kandal and Black Wheat had the full package. Both pledged loyalty, both cleared the system's minimum threshold, both got absorbed into my party roster. My command structure was solidifying. Iron teaching spears, Nick teaching axes, Erek teaching swords, Bandak teaching archery, Aaliyah managing everything that wasn't direct combat, and Benakuk handling the human intelligence side. 6 instructors shaping 60 recruits, with the best graduates destined for my system-enhanced party slots, where they'd receive magical upgrades that compressed years of training into seconds. I'd figured out the pattern now. The system wasn't just a personal power tool, it was a force multiplier for an entire army. Every party member I upgraded became an instructor who trained 10 more recruits, the best of whom became party members who trained even more recruits. An exponential growth engine disguised as a medieval military camp, powered by gold coins and one teenager's stubborn refusal to stay dead. 700 pounds of raw strength, 8 mastered combat techniques, a dragon-breathing method actively rewriting my biology, a hidden fortress producing trained soldiers, nearly 300 gold coins in savings, and roughly 6 months left before the Empire erased my family name from existence. The math was starting to work. Not comfortably, never comfortably, but the trajectory had flipped from impossible dream to insane but achievable. The broke orphan who'd fainted running from wolves was becoming something this world hadn't seen in a very long time. A Kalinsa worth fearing. My ancestors had 300 years and a continent's resources to build their legacy. I had a cheat system, a stolen valley, and the desperate energy of a man living on borrowed time in a borrowed body. Somehow, that felt like enough. 3 months of boot camp turned my bandit cave into a proper military academy, and my people went from, which end is the pointy one, to, sir yes sir, faster than I thought humanly possible. But the real magic happened with my inner circle, because the system decided to start dropping upgrades like a generous slot machine having the best day of its life. Iron hit Tier 3 first, Swadino Light Infantry, and the price tag made my eye twitch. 5 gold coins per upgrade now. The system had discovered inflation, but watching the results made every coin worth it. The man's muscles literally tore apart and rebuilt themselves on the training field in front of everyone, and 3 combat techniques he'd been desperately trying to master for weeks: swordsmanship, spin guard, and whirlwind slash, all crystallized in his brain simultaneously. Years of phantom training memories downloaded in seconds. He ran over to me, crying actual tears of gratitude, and dropped to his knees, because the slave who'd given up on ever becoming a professional fighter had just leapfrogged to near mid-level apprentice knight status in the time it takes to sneeze. 500 pounds of lifting strength. 3 mastered techniques. The man was now more dangerous than most professional soldiers in the Empire, and 6 months ago, he'd been growing wheat at spear point for bandits who fed him 1 bread roll a day. Bandak followed the next day, Tier 3 Doro Archer. Same 5 gold price tag, same spectacular results, completely different specialization. Where Iron got raw power, Bandak got turned into a biological radar system. His eyesight, hearing, and sense of smell jumped to levels that made forest animals look deaf and blind by comparison. He mastered swordsmanship, archery, and spin guard simultaneously, and while his raw strength was only 300 pounds, his agility and sensory abilities were borderline supernatural. He immediately started bringing back enough wild game, deer, boar, pheasant, to transform our camp's diet from survival rations to actual nutrition. My own meals got the premium cuts because rank has its privileges, and I needed the calories anyway since my dragon breathing technique ate through energy like fire through tissue paper. Both of them hit maximum loyalty, a perfect 100. Iron because he was the most dedicated trainee I'd ever seen, and Bandak because he'd been a Knight family's son in the Doro Empire before everything went wrong, and I'd accidentally given him back the future that slavery had stolen. Two men who would now literally die for me, not because I threatened them, but because I'd handed them something nobody else in this world would have, a second chance powered by impossible magic. Eric and Nick saw what happened and trained like men possessed. 10 days later, both crossed the Tier 3 threshold. Eric matched Iron's 3-technique loadout, but with slightly less raw power since he was younger, though I suspected he'd eventually surpass everyone thanks to his family's blue falcon breathing technique stacking with system upgrades. Nick went full Viking Berserker. Axe Mastery plus Heavy Strike technique, swinging a two-handed great axe with enough force to split a person in half lengthwise. Fewer techniques, but terrifying single-target damage. Aaliyah was last, and she made the wait absolutely worth it. Female Guardian, Tier 3, and she unlocked 4 combat techniques: swordsmanship, spin guard, whirlwind slash, and archery. The most versatile fighter in my entire squad besides me. Slightly less raw strength than Iron, but her agility matched Bandak's, which meant she could fight close range like a spinning blade tornado or fall back and snipe with arrows. My camp follower had become the second most dangerous person in the valley, and she'd done it while simultaneously managing all logistics, inventory, and my personal bathing schedule. Meanwhile, I'd been grinding archery proficiency like my life depended on it, which, historically speaking, it usually did. Also discovered something interesting about the recruitment system. Bandak trained 2 archers using Doro Empire methods, and both got classified as Doro recruits, regardless of their actual nationality. One was genuinely from the Doro Empire, the other was pure Swadino. The system apparently cared about training methodology, not birth certificates, filing that information away for future army composition optimization. The final evaluation day arrived, and I tested all 60 trainees personally. 17 passed my standards, 8 swordsmen, 4 spearmen, 3 axemen, and Bandak's 2 pre-selected archers. Less than 30% success rate, which sounds harsh until you remember these were malnourished ex-slaves who'd been holding weapons for only 3 months. The 17 who made it had genuinely earned their spots, including Benakuk, whose talents apparently extended beyond theatrical crying and into actual combat competence. 20 gold coins spent on 5 Tier 3 upgrades. 5 soldiers now operating at near-professional knight levels. 17 qualified recruits ready for squad assignment. A hunting team keeping the camp fed with fresh game. A blacksmith slowly figuring out my terrible saddle drawing. And a training doctrine that had transformed a mob of terrified scarecrows into something resembling a disciplined fighting force. 6 months ago, dying of cancer, playing video games, 0 friends. Now, secret warlord with a growing army, dragon powers, 8 personal combat techniques, and 700 pounds of raw strength steadily climbing toward the 1,000-pound threshold where true knighthood began. The wind dragon was waking up, and it was hungry. Graduation day at Eagle Beak Valley Military Academy. Enrollment, 60 traumatized ex-slaves. Graduates, 17. Acceptance rate, worse than Harvard, but with more spears and fewer student loans. I lined them up, gave the speech, tapped shoulders with my broadsword like a medieval knighting factory, and officially promoted them to professional soldiers. 17. Yes, sir, machines who 3 months ago couldn't hold a sword without dropping it on their own feet. The system confirmed every single one had loyalty above 60. Genuine, measurable devotion detected by my invisible magical HR department. I slotted 14 into my party roster and deliberately left 1 spot empty, because filling every seat on the bus before you've seen all the passengers is amateur hour. Then came the fun part, announcing the pay scale. 3 tiers, because nothing motivates humans across any universe like a visible ladder with better food on each rung. Tier 1, professional soldiers and essential craftsmen. Got 3 meals daily including white bread, meat when available, and 1 silver coin monthly. Tier 2. Militia members who farm during harvest and train during downtime. Got 3 meals of mostly okay bread, occasional meat, and 10 copper coins. Tier 3. Everyone else. Got 2 meals of black bread and the privilege of not being dead. Was it generous? By this world's standards, obscenely so. Regular peasants paid crushing taxes, performed forced labor, and received exactly 0 compensation beyond. Your lord allows you to continue breathing. My lowest tier was already better than what most free citizens experienced. My highest tier was luxury that would make city workers weep with envy. And the beautiful thing was, it cost me almost nothing. The valley grew its own wheat, the hunting team brought in wild game daily, and a silver coin per soldier. Per month was pocket change compared to mercenary contracts. Aaliyah posted the pay charts on the training ground wall, and I watched 60-plus pairs of eyes calculating their futures in real time. The promoted 17 practically glowed. The militia members looked determined to train harder. Even the bottom-tier workers seemed relieved to have structure and certainty instead of the daily terror of, will someone beat me today for existing? Next priority, weapons technology. I visited Wibart's rebuilt forge. He'd dismantled the entire mountaintop blacksmith shop, hauled every tool down the mountain, and reconstructed it in Eagle Beak Valley with the quiet efficiency of a man who'd been relocated so many times that assembly was basically his cardio routine. I'd commissioned 300 custom arrows of my own design, wolf fang, arrows with serrated multi-point steel heads that would punch through leather armor and make removal a screaming nightmare. The shafts were local mulberry wood. The fletching was tail feathers from iron beak eagles that Bandak's hunting team had been collecting, and the heads were supposed to be forged steel. Reality check. Only 180 completed, and merely 30 had proper steel heads. Wibart's charcoal furnace couldn't reach temperatures high enough to reliably convert iron to steel. The 30 good ones came from melting down captured weapons that were already near steel quality. Medieval metallurgy problems. You can design 21st century ammunition, but you're still cooking it over what amounts to a really aggressive campfire. I took the 180 arrows and filed, build a better furnace, things to solve when I'm not running a secret paramilitary operation on a deadline. Then the real excitement, new bows. My composite bow had been feeling increasingly like a toy as my strength climbed past 700 pounds. So I'd had Aaliyah find me a bowyer, and she'd actually located one among our people. Saras, a 30-something civilian craftsman who'd been hiding his woodworking talents behind a slave's survival instinct, had been quietly disassembling every captured bow in camp, studying their construction, and rebuilding them using techniques I'd never seen. He presented his masterpiece, a recurve bow reinforced with layered horn, mulberry wood, and ox sinew glue, sealed with tung oil. Compact, portable, and absolutely vicious. When he tried to string it for demonstration purposes, his face turned purple from the effort and the bowstring didn't budge. 300 pounds of draw weight. I walked over, pressed it into shape with one hand, and strung it like tying a shoelace. 300 pounds of pull meant 300 paces of killing range with serious penetrating power at the end. My old composite bow suddenly looked like a child's plaything. This recurve was a genuine weapon of war. The kind of bow that turned a skilled archer into a one-man artillery battery. I may have hugged it. I'm not confirming or denying. Saras immediately dropped to his knees and begged to join my organization as a dedicated equipment craftsman. He'd seen Wibart's Tier 1 treatment, full meals, respect, creative freedom, and wanted the same deal for his woodworking. The system pinged, apprentice carpenter Saras, loyalty 72, requesting party membership, a carpenter class. Another crafting profession with its own potential upgrade tree, just like Wibart's blacksmith class. I now had a weapons forge and a bow workshop, both operated by system-enhanced craftsmen who would presumably get better as they leveled up. While other lords bought equipment at market prices, I was building a manufacturing base that would eventually produce custom military hardware at cost. I accepted Saras faster than he finished his pledge, distributed the remaining 3 new recurve bows. One for Aaliyah, one for Bandak, one held in reserve, and immediately started planning my next move. Tomorrow, Blackrock City. I needed to handle several things that couldn't be done from a hidden valley, and time was running out on my family's deadline. Eric and Aaliyah would accompany me. Iron got command of the valley in my absence, which was either a tremendous show of trust or a tremendous gamble, but the man had 100% loyalty and near-night-level combat power. If anyone could hold the fort, it was the ex-slave who cried when I gave him superpowers. Standing on the tower steps that evening, watching my soldiers run evening drills while smoke rose from the blacksmith's forge and the carpenter's workshop, surrounded by fields of nearly ripe wheat swaying in the mountain breeze, I had one of those rare moments of clarity where everything felt aligned. I'd walked into this valley 7 weeks ago chasing a dead bandit's treasure map. Now it was a functioning military settlement producing trained soldiers, custom weapons, and enough food to sustain operations indefinitely. From squatter to warlord in 2 months flat. Not bad for a dead man's second act. 3 horses, 3 riders, 1 mission. Squeeze every last drop of value out of Black Rock City before disappearing into the wilderness to build an empire. I rode my warhorse like I'd been born in the saddle, which I absolutely had not. But after mastering spiral lance technique, my body just knew how to ride, the same way my hands knew how to shoot arrows and my sword knew how to find necks. The system's phantom training memories were the gift that kept on giving. The night certification office practically rolled out the red carpet. I crushed the mid-level apprentice night exam. 600 pounds hoisted overhead like a pillow, mounted lance technique demonstrated on my warhorse with enough flair to make the examiner's eyebrows disappear into his hairline. Aaliyah and Eric both passed the beginner exam on their first try, because apparently my boot camp produced results that most formal training academies would sell their kidneys to replicate. 40 gold coins evaporated in certification fees alone, and Aaliyah nearly had a cardiac event counting the expense. She'd become my unofficial CFO, and watching her manage finances was like watching a mother hawk guarding her last egg. 1,000 gold coins, young lord. That's what we need for the land expedition. We're burning through money like. I stopped listening after the 5th anguished sigh. She wasn't wrong about the math, but she didn't know about my track record of accidentally stumbling into fortune every time I left the house. The beautiful part, my party capacity jumped to 35 the instant I became a mid-level apprentice knight. From 15 to 35 in 1 certification stamp. Every rank upgrade was basically doubling the size of the army I could magically enhance. By the time I became a full knight, if I became a full knight, I'd potentially be able to field a small battalion of system-upgraded super soldiers. The mere thought made me giddy. Now, there was a painful reality I'd been avoiding. Iron, Bandak, and Nick couldn't become certified knights. They were branded slaves, and without their original slavery contracts, long lost in whatever nightmare journey brought them here, the Empire classified them as runaways. Runaway slaves couldn't register as professionals, period. Buying their freedom required a noble lord's sponsorship plus 10 times their market value in release fees. At their current combat level, each was worth at least 100 gold, meaning 1,000 gold PR person to free them. 3,000 gold total. My entire projected land expedition budget, just to file some paperwork. This empire's bureaucracy was designed by sadists. So they'd remain my slave soldiers, devastating fighters who could never operate independently, bound to me by magical neck tattoos and economic impossibility. The system didn't care about legal status, thankfully. It measured loyalty, not liberty. But it still left a bitter taste. We registered as the Hurricane Mercenary Squad at the Guild, my idea, because Hurricane sounded appropriately destructive for a team led by a teenager with anger management issues and a magic pocket dimension. The blonde receptionist processed our paperwork with her trademark professional smile, and I definitely didn't blush when she winked at me. Definitely not. Then Baruchko appeared like a friendly bear who'd smelled opportunity. The Wild Bull captain had a job that needed bodies. Escort duty for a frontier baron called Howlings who'd purchased slaves and supplies from the imperial interior. The cargo was arriving at Black Rock City in 3 days, needed 30 mercenaries minimum to guard the 500-mile journey to his territory in the eastern wasteland. 100 gold coins, split by contribution. I accepted immediately, then casually mentioned I'd be bringing 11 attendants, in addition to our 3 registered mercenaries. Baruchko's eyes lit up. 14 fighters for the price of 3 was excellent arithmetic from his perspective. He didn't need to know that my attendants included Tier 3 system-enhanced warriors who could individually demolish most professional soldiers. Let him think I was bringing servants. Surprises are more fun. While I was at the guild, I grabbed 2 more contracts for the same region. First, the wolf extermination job at Howling's territory that had been sitting on the board for months. 50 gold just for showing up, bonus per kill. Nobody had taken it because 500 miles into the wasteland was terrifying for normal mercenaries. For me, it was a convenient side quest on the same route we were already traveling. Second, an exploration contract from the neighboring Maple Leaf territory. Vague parameters, negotiable pay. Investigate the surrounding wilderness. No specific danger listed, which either meant it was genuinely safe or so dangerous that the Baron didn't want to scare people away. Either way, scouting the eastern wasteland was something I needed to do anyway before applying for my own land permit. Getting paid for reconnaissance I was already planning? That's not efficiency, that's art. I noticed the 500 gold undead extermination contract from the same region had been pulled. Either someone completed it, or someone tried and died, and the Baron decided to stop wasting money on mercenary funerals. Neither option was comforting, but undead weren't on my to-do list regardless. You needed true knight-level blood energy just to survive near those things, and I was still an apprentice marinating in ambition and protein. Last stop, the Crow's Nest Apothecary for 2 bottles of healing potion. Real healing potion, wizard brewed. Drink it and your wounds close instantly. Miracle juice, not the black tar ointment we'd been using. 10 gold coins per tiny bottle. Elia looked at me like I'd suggested burning money for warmth. Young lord, healing salve is fine. We don't need. Our lives are worth more than gold, Elia. In the wasteland, there are no second chances and no doctors. If someone takes a spear through the ribs, smearing black paste on it, and hoping for the best is how you attend a funeral, not prevent one, she shut up. I could see her mentally adding 20 gold to the expense column and dying a little inside. But she didn't argue further. Smart woman knew when the boss was right, even when right was expensive. 20 gold lighter, 2 miracle potions heavier, 3 mercenary contracts richer, and a party capacity of 35 soldiers strong. We rode out of Black Rock City toward Eagle Beak Valley to collect our troops. In 3 days we'd return with a small army disguised as attendants, join a convoy heading 500 miles into monster-infested wilderness, and start the final sprint toward claiming a piece of this world as my own. Hurricane Mercenary Squad. I like the sound of that. Small now, but hurricanes always start as a breeze nobody takes seriously.